considered the surrounding area to meet the needs of business customers and staff. The loss of these parking spaces is balanced with the significant benefit to the community of an EV charging facility being available to assist with the transition to electric vehicles.
Question 5. Will the Colac Otway Shire give serious consideration to dividing the Colac, Eliminate and attached areas into suburbs with various names? Not just area names for large areas, as we risked with the growth in population, many people with the same surname living in one area. Plus, we have roads with the same name in multiple named areas. This could be a disaster in an emergency when a surname and an area name are only quoted. Under the Colac 2050 growth plan, many areas are being added to existing names areas when new areas should be given specific and changed names. We are no longer a big area with a small population as applies to country areas, but a close built-up urban region. Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Thank you, Mayor. Council has no intention of naming different areas of Colac or Eliminate as suggested. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to questions from Mr. Michael Fenton. A number of questions were initially received from Mr. Fenton, and the General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations will respond to all three after I have read them out. In regard to this is from Mr. Fenton. In regard to my question posed to Council in April General Meeting concerning the Barongarook Sand Quarry, and our query re the apparent lack of accredited noise and dust monitoring having been undertaken at the site. I appreciate Mr. McNeill's reply, but according to the most affected adjoining residents, they have never cited nor are aware of any form of sound monitoring equipment along their boundary or on their properties, and have not been approached re the siting of such equipment required to perform credible testing. Given the high nuisance level of noise this site's day-to-day operation causes adjoining residents and the Council's responsibilities in addressing public nuisance issues. 1. Is the Council aware of and cited such testing being performed currently? If not, when would that occur? 2. Can the residents be informed as to where the monitors are located, or at least along which of the affected properties? And 3. Will the affected residents be permitted to view the reports? Mr. Fenton would like to also add that the ERR will not confirm or otherwise if any form of credible noise monitoring has been performed and evaluated, or any detail whatsoever, and I believe this is in total contravention of duty of care that both the ERR and Council have to the affected residents. Response, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Council understands that noise monitoring of activities at the site was undertaken by consultants engaged by the quarry operator over a 3-week period late in 2023, and that the results were provided to Earth Resources in January 2024. It's understood the monitoring results are still under consideration by Earth Resources and the EPA. Council has not been involved in these monitoring activities and encourages residents to contact the quarry manager in the first instance for details of the noise monitoring undertaken, and to contact Earth Resources with any questions or requests for information in relation to this issue more broadly.
Thank you. Another from Mr. Michael Fenton, re the sand extraction site at 165 Bushbys Road. Residents are aware that the quarry has engaged a contractor to prepare a plan to remove the native vegetation over the remaining 30-hectare quarry lot. As the Colac Otway Shire is responsible agency within our area in Barongarook for land use, planning and environmental protection measures, and as such forms part of the approval process that the quarry operations requires. Will the Council be involved in, by way of approval, or has it approved the implementation of this removal of the native vegetation to facilitate the next stage of the quarry work plan, which would include the felling and removal of large number of mature native trees and a significant amount of endangered mature native vegetation and associated wildlife habitat over the remaining 20-odd hectares of mature habitat? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Thank you, Mayor. Council does not have any jurisdiction or legal avenues to require a permit for the removal of native vegetation for any existing extractive industry work authority. The responsible authority for the Barongarook Sand Quarry is Earth Resources Victoria, and inquiries about what is approved under the work authority should be directed to Earth Resources Victoria. Council understands from Earth Resources that the removal of native vegetation was approved in the 1970s and remains a valid part of the work authority, despite significant changes being made to the planning controls relating to the removal of native vegetation.
Question 5. If a prior Colac Otway Shire approval exists for this next stage of the quarry operation, can this approval be reassessed to meet current community expectations? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor, Council is unable to apply changes retrospectively to any planning approval or use benefiting from existing use rights under the planning scheme. Council notes that the current quarry operation was established many years ago under different planning controls. Whilst current community concerns about the quarry are acknowledged, the use is allowed to continue to operate within the bounds of the work authority in place.
And in addition, question 6, what steps does the Shire have in place to ensure that this important native wildlife population are protected and moved on to suitable areas if required, or are sufficient refuge areas planned within the site? Response, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor, Council is unable to vary a permission for works being undertaken in accordance with a planning approval or work authority that's governed by Earth Resources Victoria. The quarry is understood to be operating legitimately within the boundaries approved under its work authority, including the removal of native vegetation. Council can only act if works are undertaken outside of what has been approved under the work authority.
And 7, will the adjoining residents and general community be involved in and informed of the decisions in regard to this variation to the stated council zoning policy and the stated aims of the Colac Otway Environment and Sustainability Strategy as perceived in this area in regard to native environmental protection and climate change policy guidelines? Response, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor, there are no changes proposed or recently undertaken by Council that alter the zoning that applies to the quarry and surrounding properties. The only recent change to the planning scheme was made by the State Government through Planning Scheme Amendment VC 219, applying a requirement over private land within 500 metres of the quarry for Earth Resources to be provided notification where a new dwelling or an extension to a dwelling is proposed. This change to the planning scheme was approved by the Minister for Planning without consultation with affected communities.
Thank you. I now have some questions from Karen Pearson regarding the Barongarook Sand Quarry located at 165 Bushby's Road. Is the Council aware that a community engagement plan is required for any variation to an existing work authority site plan as per the quarry? This was applied in 2019 with the development of the Mineral Resource Regulations 2019, Regulation 12, information required in the work plans. I have made numerous requests for a copy of the community engagement plan from the owners of the quarry with no response whatsoever. Is the Council able to assist in this matter? Response, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. As advised previously, Earth Resources is the responsible entity for management of the Mineral Resources Regulations requirements relating to the sand quarry at Bushby's Road. Earth Resources has advised Council that the current work plan was approved in 2009 and completed in accordance with the relevant Act at that time, which was the Extractive Industries Development Act 1995. This Act did not require an authority holder to submit community engagement plans as part of their work plans. Despite this, it's understood that Earth Resources still expects the authority holder to actively consult with the community and keep them well informed. Earth Resources has advised that if residents do not feel this is occurring, they should contact Earth Resources.
Thank you. Question 2 from Karen Pearson. For the safety of residents in Bushby's Road Rural Living Zone and indeed other road users' safety, are truck warning signs and a speed reduction being organised? Myself and others have viewed and been subjected to dangerous incidents along this part of the road since the sand truck and water delivery trucks have significantly increased due to the current productivity of the quarry. Response, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor, Council's engineering team plans to undertake a road safety audit to identify if there are specific issues that need addressing, and this may include the investigation of signs and speed limits. If there's a proposal to reduce the speed limits, Council will need to work with the Department of Transport and Planning, who approves speed limit changes.
Thank you. I now have some questions from Jason Schramm. Question 1, why is Council reducing the number of car parking spaces in Colac without consultation with the community when parking is a real problem not being acted upon by Council? Parking reduced in Corangamite Street opposite Hospital and in Johnson's car park. Response, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Council's not aware of reduced car parking in Corangamite Street, but is happy to look at this further if you provide details to us. There's been a minor change to the number of car spaces in the Johnson Street car park through installation of the EV charging station. As noted in a response to an earlier question, it's considered there's sufficient car parking available in the surrounding area to meet the needs of business customers and staff. The loss of these parking spaces is balanced with the significant benefit to the community of an EV charging facility being available to assist with the transition to electric vehicles.
Thank you. And question 2, with the amount of policy changes being rushed through Council, is the CEO trying to get the changes approved prior to the upcoming elections? Response, Chief Executive Officer.
Thanks to Mr Schramm for his question. Through the Chair, no review of policies is very normal business of Council, and in fact we have quite a few that we need to get through, and this has been done and prioritised under the guidance of our Audit and Risk Committee.
Thank you. Third question from Mr Schramm. What politicians did the Mayor meet with, both state and federal, prior to the release of the state and federal budgets, and what was the list of priorities presented to the politicians, if any? I'll answer that one. Council advocates throughout the year, along with partners and alliances, rather than submit a list to the state budget or to the federal budget. Council was specifically asked to nominate some priorities to the state budget in late 23, and that's the time when they're developing budgets, and nominated a range including the following: Birregurra Place Stage 2, Colac Cultural and Tourism Precinct, Colac Bike Park, Key Worker Accommodation Projects, Eliminite Recreation Reserve Pavilion, Birregurra Recreation Reserve Pavilion, Highview Trail Apollo Bay for project planning, Victorian Blue Ocean Safety Skills Centre in Apollo Bay, and Apollo Bay Childcare, just to name some of the main priorities. We'll now go on to some questions from the Apollo Bay Chamber of Commerce. First is a statement. 14 years ago, Colac Otway Shire Parks Victoria and the Otway Rangers Walking Track Association instigated a feasibility study on short walks in the Apollo Bay region. A detailed feasibility study was commissioned on 6 walks. 2 walks were recommended to Colac Otway Shire as a priority. The Shire motioned support for the 2 walks and unanimously endorsed the Highview Walk. The walk has remained in Council's strategic plans as a project of importance, and the Shire has conducted a separate feasibility study on the walk and its positive economic benefits to the Apollo Bay and broader region. After 14 years, no action has been taken to facilitate the implementation of the project. Question: can Council please provide the Apollo Bay Chamber of Commerce with a status report and listing of priority for the feasibility and pre-construction study for the Highview Trail located in Apollo Bay? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. The development of the Highview Trail remains an advocacy priority for Council. Whilst the Apollo Bay Trail's feasibility study recommended that this trail was feasible and would provide benefits for the community, further work is required to progress the project to being funding ready. Council has previously applied for external funding to progress the required investigations and design work, however hasn't yet been successful in securing that funding. Council will continue to seek funding to progress the required work in order for it to be ready to seek funding for its construction.
Thank you. I now have questions from Mr Ian Baker. Mr Baker submitted a series of questions about Blue Water, which I'll read out, and the General Manager, Community and Economy will provide a response based on their themes, all relating to the evacuation last week at Blue Water Fitness Centre. 1. Why have there been so many evacuations over time, and at what cost to ratepayers, and what steps are being put in place to minimise any false alarms? Why were there so many evacuation procedures not followed? Example, evacuate under instructions from staff via nearest exit. Example, some people took up to 5 minutes to evacuate with no sense of urgency. Example, assumption made, nothing to worry about, it's that alarm again. CFA member has told me it wasn't that alarm, that this is a very dangerous assumption to be making. 3, why is the evacuation map I looked at quite small, worn and tatty, not laminated and stuck on the wall at hip height? And 4, is there ongoing training, refresher training or evacuation drills held? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Regarding the series of questions about evacuations, I have the following information. Including last week, fire alarms have been triggered, causing an evacuation of Blue Water 2 times since 1st of June 2023. For each evacuation, the CFA are automatically called, who charge council $1,882 per call out. The fire safety system is inspected monthly and after each activation by independent contractors. These reports are provided to the CFA. Council has not been advised of any faults with the system. After any evacuation, a review is conducted to ensure procedure was followed and provide learning for the future. The review of last week's evacuation found procedure was followed. Thanks for the feedback about the map. We'll get a new map made up. And evacuation drills are held annually as per the guidelines for safe pool operations. All lifeguards, duty managers and senior leadership staff undertake quarterly in-house training that includes emergency response.
Thank you. And further, are the cleaning contractors responsible for cleaning in the gym and surrounding areas and rooms? And if yes, how often and why does it seem that this is not done? And there does not seem to be any consequences for the contractor. They just seem to do less than the contract requirements but don't have any financial penalty. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, council cleaning contractors are responsible for all cleaning at Blue Water Leisure Centre. Gym staff provide supplementary vacuuming and wiping down of surfaces during the day. Blue Water Leisure Centre staff provide a weekly feedback log to the cleaning contractor.
Thank you.
Mayor, just a question. I feel if I may, I feel that perhaps the final point in that question wasn't answered, asking if contractors do less than the contract requirement. Sorry, where was it? It was about penalties for the contractor. Sorry, I'm just looking for the exact position. Well, there does not seem to be any consequences for the contractor.
Do you want to answer?
Can we possibly hear some elaboration upon that if there are
I think
consequences for the contractor if
the
they
CEO
don't?
wants to make a comment.
Thanks, through the chair. I would probably just respond that I'm assuming that this is an assumption from Mr. Baker, as I doubt that he would be privy to the details of the contract management, and it's not something we discuss in a public forum anyway. Thanks.
Thank you. I now have some questions from David Walsh. A number of questions were received from Mr. Walsh in relation to the proposed basin and wetland at Irrawilipi Road, and I'll read them all before the General Manager, Community and Economy responds. Mr. Walsh stated, I asked a question at the council meeting on the 22nd of the 2nd, 2023 with regards to the Irrawilipi Road basin upgrade about when this project would be finished. Your reply was that the project is subject to 2 external funding agreements, one with the Australian Government, one with the Victorian Government, and the project is due for completion by April 2025. 1, after years of planning and 3 years of funding in place, is this project still on time to be finished by April 2025? 2, if it's not going to be finished by April 2025, why not? 3, has the funding been compromised through lack of progress? 4, has creative accounting been used to cover this? 5, how much has been spent on planning so far? 6, have the plans been finalised? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. This project is progressing well. However, some of the preliminary design and approval processes have been delayed while we wait for responses from stakeholders and agencies, including work on the flora and fauna assessment and cultural heritage. Council works very closely on this project with Regional Development Victoria, who oversees the $3 million grant from the state government, and we are in the process of amending the funding agreement with a revised end date of March 2026. Council had also decided to direct $1.2 million of funding from the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program from the federal government to this project. However, the end date for that program can't be changed, and so we are swapping this LRCI funding to other projects currently funded by Council. This way, Council still receives the LRCI and there is no net cost to Council. Total expenditure to date is approximately $276,000 on consultants, project management, site assessment and clean-up of the site to enable access. The engineering and landscape plans are at a concept design stage, and the consultants will soon move to prepare final designs and associated documentation for tender purposes.
Thank you. That concludes the written questions. I'll now move to questions from the gallery. If each person as you come up to the lectern could introduce yourself and ask your question, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Helen Patch from Colac, from Fulton Street in Colac, indeed. And my question is in regard to Fulton Street. About 12 months ago, it was very exciting because there was a new subdivision started on the corner of Fulton and Hearn Streets. Now, that's been going on for about 12 months. The road was duly closed and there were lots of signs saying road closed, and so going out the southern end of Fulton Street was not possible. The road has been completed and it's lovely. People are obviously driving down it because there is stubbies and takeaway food containers there already, which is always promising, isn't it? Anyway, the road has not been opened. It's still not opened. I've made 4 phone calls to the council. On 2 of those occasions, the person was not at his or her desk, and yesterday the person was not at work. So it has been very frustrating, and I know I'm not the only resident who has complained to council. Now, ostensibly it's all been finished, but the road is still closed. We cannot get out on the Hearn Street corner of Fulton Street, and I'm asking why.
Thank you. Mr McNeill.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Helen. Certainly acknowledge the lack of response to your phone calls, and thank you for raising that concern with us. It's something that we feel is very important, is around improving our customer service, and so we'll look into the circumstances of that for you. In terms of the issue with the closure of Fulton Street, that subdivision has certainly taken longer than all of us would have liked. So we do understand the frustration of residents around the continued closure of the road. I can confirm, though, that we've asked the contractor to remove the fencing or the barriers, and that we hope that that'll be undertaken by
And Madam Mayor, could I just ask your indulgence for a moment, please?
A follow-up question, I think, is what you're asking.
I'm not going to ask a question. Could I congratulate...
I'm not sure that Mr McNeill had finished his answer. Had you finished your answer, Mr McNeill?
Sorry, I finished the question. Yes, thank you. I would like to congratulate Stephen Hart on his term on council. Stephen and I worked together for a number of years on council. We didn't always agree. In fact, we seldom agreed. But I think we had a good working relationship, and I would like to thank Stephen for the contribution he's made to the people of the Colac Otway Shire, particularly for the Otways and the coast. And I wish Stephen and Chris the best in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. It's very kind. Well said. Well said. Next question, please.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. My name's Mick McCrickard from St Joseph's Flexible Learning Centre. We've got a school in 174 to 176 in Hearn Street, and it caters for young people who are disengaged with mainstream school and who suffer from, in most cases, from pretty severe trauma. We've got 60 young people enrolled, ages from 12 to around about 25, and we work in an area probably twice the size of this room. Why I've come here tonight, we have all noticed that the Colac Specialist School, the one that was functioning in Wilson Street, Colac, is now vacant. And I do understand, just on the grapevine, that there may be talk of a housing project starting there. And my question to you guys is quite simply, in the conversations that come along, is it possible that St Joseph's Flexible Learning Centre could be part of the conversations around that space? It just seems quite ridiculous to me that we've got a school that's set up and not being used and could be used by the young people of Colac who, for various reasons, are not able to attend a mainstream school. So I haven't got a question as such, but rather a request that consideration for our school could be part of any discussions that come up in relation to the former Colac Specialist School. And before I go, I'd just like to thank Councillor Potter, who has always been a supporter of our school through me. And I would like to invite, and we will get a written invitation to councillors to come to our school and have a look and just see the cramped conditions and the need for us to expand to a total of around about 80 to 100 young people. So thank you guys for listening, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
Anyone make a comment? No. Next person who's got a question, thank you, Mr McCrickard. Next question, Mr Schramm. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Jason Schramm from Colac. Just in regard to the $2 million that Council have got for solving the world's housing shortage, when that $2 million, a lot of money, is finally spent, how many beds will we actually get for that $2 million, or who will own the design plans or the concept plans or whatever of this $2 million spend when it's all said and done?
Thank you, CEO.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mr Schramm. I'll respond through the chair. So this $2 million that you're referring to is a federal government funding grant that council and partners have been successful in securing, and it's not for the construction of housing. It's actually for demonstrating a streamlined and more adaptable and innovative approach to try and solving the housing challenge that we have, particularly in regional areas. And why would the federal government expend that much money? I think that we would appreciate that despite everyone's good intention, there is a fair level of conservatism and risk aversion in, to be honest, government and sometimes the construction industry and even the community about doing things quite differently and in a rapid way. And this project is to not just do master planning, community engagement around different types and styles of housing, working with housing providers to understand how things need to be arranged and can be managed, but also doing some testing of prototypes to prove that adaptable modular housing can actually be really fit for use, climate resilient housing that suits regional areas. And so there's a whole complex piece to the project that is aiming to be not just of benefit to Colac and Apollo Bay if the sites actually do move through to a future construction scenario, but something that can prove the technology and the processes that can be translated then across other regional areas. And scenarios where that might be really, really important might be in response to emergencies, for example, not just the housing crisis, but natural disaster emergencies. So I think the federal government has recognised a whole lot of benefits through the $2 million. In terms of who would own the outcomes, so the planning permit applications would be made in the name of council. Council would hold the permits if they are approved, albeit it would still be then up to landowners to decide if they are to be acted on or not. One of the things that we are trying to demonstrate with the Victorian government is how their planning processes in particular need to be fast-tracked, and there are some mechanisms to do that. We think we have good support from the Victorian government to test them through this project. Okay, so short answer, council would actually hold the approvals, albeit that doesn't commit them to be actioned. What it does is prove that things can be done in a much, much faster way than what we've seen in the last couple of years.
And it won't provide any beds at all?
It's not a construction project.
Okay. I have a second question, Mayor.
Second question.
Yeah, just it's a bit on what former Councillor McCrickard asked on St Joseph's. It's a bit more of a direct question. Will council advocate for that education facility to go into the former special school at the Wilson Street property before it, goes into disrepair or falls down or is torn down for another project?
Yeah, thanks again. I'm happy to respond to Mr Schramm's questions. So, Council is aware of the great work that St Joseph's Learning Centre has been providing, and it's really important to young people in our community and their families. And those families and young people, briefings I've had with representatives of the school directly, they're stepping up to make sure that it's successful as well, and they're doing their bit as a community, but they need to be supported. Of course, Council will advocate for the St Joseph's Learning Centre to be able to continue to operate, whether that is at a specific site. I don't think we need to lock that in. What we need to do is make sure that they are part of the consideration, and if we can find a great site, I'm sure that Learning Centre will be happy to, be wherever it works for them. That may be the Wilson Street former special school site. That might be something that works for the Department of Education at St Joseph's while the master planning happens. That's a discussion for state government as well. Your comment about not wanting to see those buildings become dilapidated and in poor condition, I think that's also something that we would share. A concern. We see often school sites end up just being locked up and walk away and not put to a use, which is one of the reasons why we've been looking at the site and trying to say, well, it needs to have a good future for the community, whether that's accommodation or whether that's education, it needs to be put to good use for the community.
Thanks. I guess, why were the speed humps removed from there? The speed humps out the front of the school, why were they removed? What reason?
Mr McNeill.
Through you, Mayor, the speed humps were removed because the school had closed and there was not considered a need for them to stay there ongoing.
Thank you.
Just want to remind people it's still 40 kilometres an hour, so don't speed.
Yes, good.
It's a longer process to change speed limits.
You've got to change it through, yeah. And any other questions from the gallery? Thank you.
My name's Graham Watson. I'd like to know, off-leash dog parks, about 6 months ago, it was front page in the Colac Herald, and council suggested using football ovals and that, but an off-leash dog park is fully enclosed with a fence and a gate, and of course a bowl of water for the dogs. Right? Now, we have to take our dogs because they're anxious on leash. We have to take them to Geelong. At the Barwon River, there's a 2-dog park. We have to take them to Warrnambool, which has got a big dog park, which is on a spare piece of land, about 50 metres by 50. We go to Portland, where there's 2 dog parks side by side, right next to the council office. In Millicent, half the size of Colac, has got a dog park right next to the council hall and the tourist centre. This is in Millicent. 2 in Portland. In Mount Gambier, there's 5 off-leash, fully enclosed dog parks. Now, 6 months ago, there was a lot of hot air in Colac about having one, but since then, I have not heard a word. A spare piece of land, just a fence around it, and a gate. That's all I'm asking.
So your question is, would we consider a dog park? There's a good one in Ballarat too, I know.
Yeah, but we can't travel everywhere just to
That's
let the
true.
dogs out. Because a lot of dogs on leash, people have to walk them early in the morning or late at night because they're on leash and they're anxious. Take the leash off the dogs, put them in an enclosed dog park, and they're all relaxed. You'd be surprised in these dog parks how many people absolutely love to see their dogs mixing with other dogs off leash. Now, it's a piece of land, unused land, in Geelong at the Barwon River under the bridge. They've used that land for 2 dog parks. Why can't we do it here?
That's the question. Why can't we do it here? Who would like to take that? Thank you. Mr Sheeran.
Through you, Mayor, thanks for the question. It has been raised by some members of the community previously and through the Recreation Reserve master planning that we did a little while ago. And my recollection was that we identified a space at Century Reserve on the old hockey ground that might be appropriate. We haven't yet got the funding to actually construct the dog park. We do know that dog owners are able to use recreation reserves that do have fencing and utilise those quite well, which is great to see. I'll take the opportunity to request that dog owners do pick up after their dogs. We don't want that left on
I
sporting
really
ovals,
don't think you're answering the question, sir. Recreation centres are not fully enclosed. They have roads going in to the gates, which are open 24/7. Around the oval, there is a big gap where the dressing rooms and that are. So they're not fully enclosed. This is just a piece of land at Warrnambool, out of South Warrnambool near the footy ground. Is it just a spare piece of land? It is 100 metres long, 50 wide, and you'll be surprised the amount of dogs that are let in there just to roam around and relax. You'd be surprised. And Portland has got 2, one for large dogs, one for small dogs. Millicent, little town like Camperdown, has got a dog park right next to the council. So a fully enclosed means fully enclosed with a fence around it, a fence and a gate. Is that asking too much? Or?
Mr Sheeran, do you want to add?
There's land across the road here
I think
at
it's
the back of the railway station.
Mr Watson, I think you're asking that we consider that in our projects going forward.
6 months ago.
No, going forward, are you asking us to consider?
I haven't heard nothing since.
Okay.
I'm happy to catch up with Mr Watson and have a further
Have a discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy
That'd
to
be
do
good.
that, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Any other questions from the gallery? No other questions? Well, we'll move on. Thank you. Thank you for all those questions, and that concludes question time. We go on to petition and joint letters, which we do not have any, and I'd like to ask, are there any declarations of interest, please? No. Go on to confirmation of minutes. I propose that we move to confirm the minutes of the council meetings held on the 24th of April 2024. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hart.
I'm happy to move them, Mayor, but just to be clear that I'm moving the amended version that we received, which had a couple of minor changes.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Is it to be opposed? Not to be opposed. If no opposition, I declare that the motion be carried. Thank you. Now we move on to officers' reports. Item 9.1, project budget adjustments and cash reserve transfers, May 2024. The purpose of this report is to present the project budget adjustments and cash reserve transfers for council ratification and approval. These budgets are for the 23-4 capital works and operational projects. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? No questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a Sorry, Councillor Arnott.
Sorry, Mayor White. Just if I could ask our CEO, please, to give some clarity to the community in respect to the wetlands project funding and that adjustment of that funding for that, please.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. I think that Mr Serena tried to explain this earlier, but I'll have a go.
Yep.
So Council has a series of projects that it allocated around 3 local roads and community infrastructure funding to. That included $1.2 million allocation to the Eliminate Wetlands project, with $3 million coming from the state government. As explained earlier, there have been some delays in the planning processes, and so we are running behind time. And there is no possible extension to the LRCI funding. We have therefore got to make a decision around how we make sure we have our community benefit maximum amount from that funding, while still meeting all of our other obligations and delivering the projects. What we have is a series of projects that also are funded through LRCI with council contributions, and so we have reset the balance of that external funding to council contribution across the series of projects. All the projects remain with the same scope. There is no net cost to council, but by doing this, and the federal government is going through the process of approving it as we speak, by doing this, the community doesn't miss out on any grant funding, and it adds no extra cost, but gives us a level of risk management around that major project.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you. Any follow-up question,
No,
Councillor
that's
Arnott?
fine. I'm just happy to move the recommendation.
You move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? Councillor, can you state the recommendation that you're
The
moving?
recommendation is as up on the
As up on
screen
the
there,
screen.
please. There are 4 components of that.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Would you like to speak to your
Thank you, Mayor White.
recommendation?
Look, this is just a continuation of the reporting and the full transparency of council to our community for projects that are ongoing within our community. It's great to see some of our projects that have come in, and most of our projects come in on budget and some coming in better. And occasionally that, because we're getting that return back with funds, we're able to then allocate funds to other projects that need that little bit more. An example being that Blue Water, the works around the toddler pool there, and also the sale yard septic system, where they found that they needed to do more works to make that comply. So that just keeps things ticking along nicely, and the community can be reassured that our money is being used in a wise manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Hart?
The only thing I'll just add, or perhaps repeat, is I think this is a particularly transparent process. If you didn't quite catch all the details from Councillor Arnott, who just summarised them, now it's in the agenda and you can see all the money that's either underspends or where it's been allocated to other projects.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? No other councillor wishes to speak. Councillors, I now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 7-0. 6, sorry. I'm so used to saying 7. 6-0. We've got Councillor Costin as an apology. Move on to 9.2. Draft nature strip planting policy and guidelines for exhibition. The purpose of this report is to seek endorsement of the draft nature strip planting policy and guidelines for public exhibition. Councillor, before I call for a motion, do any councillors have a question of officers? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I note that the suggestion is this goes out for public comment, but I've really got a question around the ruling out edible plants on the nature strip. And does that mean that someone can't plant some rosemary or parsley or lettuce? I'll save the rest for the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Mr McNeil.
Through you, Mayor. The way that the guidelines have been written in this draft is that they would exclude edible plantings being part of the guidance for what people can plant without a permit. So the purpose of these guidelines is to assist people in planting the nature strips without needing any permits from council. There are a number of reasons why the guidelines have sought to discourage the planting of edible plants, and they include things like the fruit that can drop from trees onto nature strips. It can include potential contamination from the fumes of cars travelling along the road and dust and so on, and in terms of that not being preferable for foods that people are eating. But it doesn't preclude those from being planted. It would just mean that for someone to plant those sorts of plants, they would need to apply for a permit and have them considered by our local law staff. But I would say that this is a draft and we're seeking community input on it, and so if there are concerns from the community about that not being something supported by the guidelines, we'd encourage them to make a submission, and we can consider that issue further before council adopts a final document.
Thanks, Mr McNeil. Any other questions? Councillor Hanson.
My understanding is that some other councils do allow you to plant, or you can plant edible plants on your nature strip. Is that right? What do you know?
Would someone like to answer that?
Through you,
Snowman,
Mayor,
thank you.
thank you for the question. Yes, some other councils do allow edibles with a lot of caveats around all those risks in terms of, that it can be taken, that it can attract vermin, that it's both the soil that it's getting planted in can be contaminated, and then pollutants and dust from the vehicle traffic that interfaces with those nature strip guidelines. Also with edibles, some people have allergies to certain things, strawberries, other things. So if they're out in the public realm, they could create a risk for kids coming along picking them. So there's a number of reasons why most councils will exclude edibles from nature strip plantings. And the important things to remember is that these nature strips interface with a private property right adjacent to them that also have garden space. So edibles are considered more suitable to be planted in the private realm rather than out in the public space.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report. Does any councillor wish to move? Thank you, Councillor Hart. Seconded, Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I will move the recommendation. I think it's important to get these guidelines out for comment. I think it's important to eventually get away from the strict regulations of nature strips which exist at the moment, that you'd need a permit to plant out anything other than a bit of grass. But I really have significant reservations about the restrictions on edible plants, particularly things like herbs, rosemary, a bit of parsley, a bit of lettuce. I really struggle a little bit with this. I do acknowledge that things like fruit trees, well, maybe a large fruit tree, who's going to prune it? So maybe that is an issue. But on the other hand, there's dwarf fruit stock that you can get. And I remember being involved in a project with council 12 years ago. Yes, I know I've been around a little while. When at Donaldson Street, we're actually planting with the residents' approval and a project that have been in the local park and on the nature strip, particular, I think they were dwarf fruit trees, to have that sort of stuff around. And I tell you what, when you look at some of the apples you get from the supermarket, I don't think they could be any worse than what you would grow out on the street, car fumes or not. So I guess coming back to the motion, it's important we get this out for comment, but I really have significant reservations about the over-regulation against some basic edible plants. Perhaps not having root vegetables because maybe they are a bit more exposed to potatoes and the like to the soil. But, a bit of rosemary and a bit of parsley, I mean, gee whiz.
Thanks,
It just seems a
Councillor.
bit too far to me.
Bit too far. Okay. Councillor Potter.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Whilst I have a personal preference for a neatly mowed lawn, I'm very pleased to see this report. It's a well-constructed report, and I encourage everyone to have a look at it. And it comes on the back of a call from the community to be allowed different plantings in their nature strips. I understand the issue Councillor Hart's raised, and I hope we get some feedback about that, but I encourage everyone to have a look at this report. It's very good, and interested in the feedback.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Other councillors? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. It's been interesting to actually watch Councillor Hart and his input into this. He's actually put a lot into it, so I thank him for doing that over the time to help get to this point. I endorse this being going out to the public. It's great. But this also forms part, if we move past the edible part, and I understand the concerns there, This also forms part of our greening policy, so that people have the opportunity to know what they can plant out there. So maybe they can assist us by planting some trees out there. So they'll look at their nature strip and say, well, the council hasn't been able to get there and do that yet. Can I put in a particular wattle tree? Can I put in something that's going to be suitable, that won't interfere with the power lines or the utilities underground? And that will grow appropriately there. So these will help in those guidelines so that people can understand what they can do. And if we can get an understanding of what people are doing, record that, then that will help the council and the community to understand what's happening with their environment. And that would be a good outcome.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor wish to speak? No other councillor wishes to speak. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 9.3, review of complaints policy for exhibition. The purpose of this report is to seek the endorsement of council for public exhibition of the draft complaints policy following a review of the 2019 policy. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering if, to be able to tease it out, I guess, for the community as well during this meeting, what are the significant changes to the complaints policy as opposed to the proposed complaints policy as opposed to our previous one?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Mayor.
McNeil.
I can take that question. I might just, that is documented in the report, so I'll just bring that up. Thank you. So there's a number of changes. One of them is that there's greater clarity of the definition of a complaint, and I think this is a really key thing because often people contact council with a request for a service, and it might be that they're asking for a pothole on the road to be fixed, and that is a request for service, but it needs to be differentiated between someone then contacting council and saying, well, I've contacted council a number of times about this pothole and it hasn't been fixed, and that is a complaint about the lack of responsiveness of council to that request. So this review has been a very good process of making sure that this policy has some really good clarification of what a service request is versus a complaint, and provides some examples of that. It also has increased definition of complaints that may not be investigated. So there are some matters that are documented in the policy that wouldn't be further investigated. Reference to complaints about the conduct of the CEO, that's not something which had previously been identified in the earlier version. Updated contact information for council for those that are wishing to lodge a complaint. Additional guiding principles of being responsive, customer focused, and for complainants to be anonymous. Greater detail on unreasonable complaint conduct, and increased emphasis on data capture and its analysis. And that last one is very important because obviously one of the real strengths of our complaints process is being able to look at what are the trends that we see in complaints that are coming in over time, and us being able to use that information to help drive improvement in council's service delivery.
Thanks, Mr. McNeil. Any other councillors have questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this? Councillor Arnott.
I'd like to move the recommendation as on the screen, please.
Is it to be seconded? Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Arnott. Oh, is it to be opposed? Not to be opposed. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. Noting that this goes out to community to review, which I invite the community please to have their input into it, as been suggested by officers. I'd like to thank our staff for putting this together. It's very much taken on board by our staff and by executive that a complaint is an opportunity to improve. It's actually taken as an opportunity rather than seen as an obstacle to the organisation, and that's the way it should be seen. And I've noted their concerns whenever a resident has rang me and said, look, Max, I was in the council offices and I don't think I got a response that I wanted for this complaint that I've got. Can you see into that? And every time I've mentioned that to officers, they've also shared that concern. So this has been drafted with that in mind, to try to make sure that we get on top of that, to try to make sure that we have a process in place that allows us to take the best advantage of complaints as they come in, so that the community can be heard, so we can get better at responding to them, and that we never have to go back again to that pothole gets filled when they're asked to. We don't get that complaint, so we can respond in an appropriate way. And if it doesn't get filled, we can find out why not. So that's what we're looking to achieve here. So I commend the community for their input. Thank you.
Councillor Arnott. Councillor Finnegan.
Yeah, I think Councillor Arnott said it quite well on this matter, and I think that the reality is, as someone who operates a small business, particularly in retail, I do see that complaints aren't necessarily a bad thing. They're an opportunity to look at what you've been doing, perhaps modify, essentially modify the way you've been operating, especially if it's to the detriment of a customer or the like. And we've seen just at this meeting, we've seen one particular member of the community bring up an issue that they've brought up previously, and certainly not in any manner of vitriol or anything like that, but just highlighting an issue, and that hopefully this proposed new policy will help us stop these issues from occurring, and members of the community won't feel like they have to call around councillors or come to a meeting to ask a question to see that something's resolved. So, and certainly I think that it's no slight on our officers or anything at the moment. It's just that sometimes things fall between the cracks, and that hopefully this new and improved policy will, this new and improved policy can hopefully help deal with some of those issues, and I look forward to hearing what the community thinks regarding it.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This policy the original one was adopted in 2019, so it's due for a review. The only thing I'm going to add that perhaps hasn't been teased out, although it was in answering to questions, that there's been situations in the past where people come in and they want to complain about a particular issue, a damaged footpath, whatever it might be, quite reasonably, but that it's got caught up in the complaints policy because they might have used the word complaint. And I think really teasing that out, that while someone might, quite understandably, they want to complain about a bit of footpath that needs to be fixed, if that's the first time it's come to council, it's no need to get tied up with this very formal process. So I'm glad that particular issue has been teased out in this. But of course, this is going out for comment for 6 weeks, and I'd encourage the public to have a look at it.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No other councillor wishes to speak. I now have a motion before us, so I'll move to a vote. All those in favour? 6-0. Motion is carried. Move on to item 9.4, review of procurement policy for exhibition. The purpose of this report is to endorse the draft procurement policy to be placed on public exhibition for a period of 6 weeks for the purpose of inviting submissions. Before I ask for a motion, councillors, does anyone wish to ask a question of officers? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have asked for it to put up an alternative, but my question relates to the alternative. Is it possible to have that put up on the screen, please? It just has some extra words in point 2, and my question is regards the draft policy, which talks about not being able to split contracts, but then on the other hand, there can be situations where it might be worthwhile having different contracts doing different areas. In fact, I think that might reflect how the cleaning contract is being handled. So I was wondering to get some clarity on a clause that prevents the splitting of contracts to bypass delegation levels, as distinct from splitting contracts which may have different components, and whether these words in clause 2 might help to tease that out a bit.
Thanks, Councillor Hart.
Thanks,
CEO,
Councillor
thank
Hart.
you.
I will respond to that one. As I steal the Mayor's power, sorry about that. So thanks for raising it. I think it's an important principle that is helpful for our community to also understand. The reason that our draft procurement policy very clearly states that officers should avoid contract splitting is because contract splitting is a very naughty practice where some people might choose to break contracts down so that they fit under financial delegation, or to avoid the more open, transparent, robust procurement processes that would otherwise apply to contracts of greater value, and that's why it's not permitted. However, there are times where creating options within a contract that has been put out to market very transparently, creating options where smaller local suppliers can respond, they might be able to better service a geographical area or a particular part of a service, then that can be a very appropriate and desirable outcome, and as long as it doesn't compromise the procurement process itself. So there is a difference between contract splitting, where one activity would otherwise be done as one contract and you're trying to manipulate a process or avoid a process. It's very different to strategically designing, for example, a recent cleaning contract where we said there may be benefits for offering this as someone to respond to all or part of the service. So I hope that made that clearer.
Thanks. Thanks, CEO. Does anyone else have a question about the procurement? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. Look, noting that this procurement policy is a requirement to ensure that we have appropriate safeguards in place and processes, there will be some parts of council operations, and that might be OPIS or something like that, the community services, which this won't fit. So can someone talk to us about some of the exemptions that sit in that context, please?
I'm happy to also respond to that one, only because I have it open. So there are two types of exemptions that are generally recognised in the contract, and they're in the attachments. Some things are reasonably exempt from market processes because they don't make sense or there isn't a market for them. And then there's another part that talks about exemption for how things may or may not need to be put into the system. In terms of market, yes, there are times where reasonable exemptions from going through the whole market process might be reasonable, such as it might be that we're actually managing money on behalf of a client like an OPAS client. The balance to that is we are still responsible for someone else's money, and so we want to make sure there is still a reasonable process around that. So there is a balance in there. It's about us in the draft policy trying to find that balance.
Thank you. Follow-up question, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. So I guess where I'm going with this is this might be a circumstance where you have a understanding with certain contractors, say mowing lawns or whatever. You're not going to need 3 quotes every time for doing that for clients, but you do have a process in place in the background in that system to make sure you manage that in the correct financial responsible way.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. That is the balance we're trying to manage. We don't do blanket exemptions on public money or other people's money because that's not appropriate, but we need to get strategically, have a strategic approach. So panel contracts are a very, very helpful example of that, where we might have a panel of people who can do garden maintenance, and that can streamline and make those one-off small jobs very, very, I guess, effective. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Councillor Hart. Councillor Hart, do you want to state your motion? It's an alternate.
The one I'm moving is basically the recommendation, but it has a few more words in clause 2 around recognising that council will consider opportunities to create smaller packages of work when appropriate, with the aim of making council's contracts more accessible for smaller or locally based suppliers. So suggesting that that be included, noting that this is going out for comment for 6 weeks anyway.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Is it to be seconded? Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Hart?
Yeah, I'm happy. Time to go? Time to speak? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mayor. I've just got a pop-up in front of the agenda. So the last procurement policy was adopted in 2021. There was an audit in May 2023 that suggested some improvements on the procurement policy, and they're listed on page 77 and 78 in the main, and I'm not going to go through those. But in reviewing the policy, there was a thorough look at this, and this is to go out for comment for 6 weeks. The issue of the splitting of the contracts, absolutely agree that there shouldn't be splitting of the contracts just to bypass delegations. But the issue that I'm talking about and aim to address in point 2, and the CEO has touched on it with the cleaning project contract, it might be, to use the cleaning contract for example, that someone might be able to service the southern part of the Shire but doesn't have the sort of operation that can do the whole Shire. And it may be that someone else can do the whole Shire. So I think it's important with contracts such as that, that council can consider tenders perhaps in parts or a whole and make an assessment. Perhaps there might be someone else who does the north and Colac. And rather than just saying it all has to be one large contract, when you say it must be all one large contract, you tend to start excluding smaller operators, and you also tend to start excluding local operators. Not always, but that can be the case. So that's why I think it's important to have more options on the table with these, and I appreciate that's being done with the cleaning contract. And the words in point 2 are just trying to tease that issue out a little bit more.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. As usual, Councillor Hart has managed to get to the core of the issues here and just provide some clarity to the end result. I think the executive had already intended that that would be the case, but this actually opens it out and makes it clearer so that everyone in the future, if different eyes look at it, that they know what we're talking about. And I think that's a good thing. So thank you for that. And this does give the opportunity for our local people to have an opportunity to put quotes in and maybe not go for the whole big project, but at least have a go at some part of it. And we have seen examples within the smaller communities around our Shire where local contractors could do the job better and for a lower cost rather than having it go to the one large contractor. So this is a good thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor wish to speak? No other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Now move on to item 9.5. Review of governance rules for exhibition. The purpose of this report is to present Council with a set of revised governance rules for public consultation in line with Council's community engagement policy. Before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? Any questions? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, I have got a question. In the officer report for this item, I was just interested in why the changes to public question time weren't flagged as a key information, because I think for the public, they're probably key information.
Councillor.
Sorry, just a point of order.
Yes.
Should we perhaps give a microphone
Yeah, there's
to the
people
governance
online,
manager
so
because
you
there's people
actually...
online?
No, good point, thank you.
Apologies for that. So through you, Mayor, there are sort of 3 categories of changes that highlighted in the report, the first being those that are essential to bring the rules into alignment with the provisions of the 2020 Act. The second category of changes are those that are flagged as very significant policy shifts, and I've detailed some of the examples of those changes that are proposed in these draft rules in the report. The changes to the provisions relating to public question time, it's I suppose editorial in nature, in that the difference between the 2 drafts, i.e. attachment 1 and attachment 2, is relatively minor, but I do appreciate the point that, and it's probably worthwhile pointing out that the difference between the proposed governance rules for adoption for the purposes of exhibition at attachment 1 and the second version at attachment 2 is relatively minor in terms of the wording, but to explain the difference, the first does propose that for members of the public who wish to speak from the gallery at a public meeting and to register questions, that they provide the actual question in writing through the governance function at the commencement of that meeting. The second version, which is presented to the public, attachment 2, provides that the member of the public need only nominate the topic of their question as opposed to the specific wording of their question.
Thank you, Ms Pope. Any other questions? No other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Potter, to be seconded. Councillor Arnott. Oh, which motion are you going to move? Yes, we've got Councillor Potter. Could you state the motion you wish to move,
I'd
please?
like to move the recommendation as on the screen, please.
As on the screen. Thank you.
So on the screen, just for the audio recording, that is the recommendation, Councillor Potter. Can I just check?
Yes, that's
Yep.
the recommendation.
So that's the recommendation that people who are joining us online will have in front of them as well. Can I just confirm that? Yep, that's correct. So we have Councillor Potter moving it. We have Councillor Arnott seconding.
No, I'm not seconding that for attachment 1. I would prefer attachment 2.
Okay, so you're not seconding? Question? Yep.
I think it's important for both the public and councillors. So attachment 1 means the person would have to write their question out if they were in the gallery. Is that a correct understanding? That's the option that requires them to actually write the whole question out. Okay.
That's correct. That's the one you're moving, Councillor Potter.
Well, that's the one I'm moving, Mayor.
Okay, so do I need a seconder for that?
Yeah.
Could I perhaps just suggest, if no one's willing to second this, if they've got another
Well,
motion they're willing
I'm
to
asking, is anyone willing to
foreshadow?
second it? Is anyone willing to second Councillor Potter's? No one's seconding that? So that lapses.
Yep. So that means the whole item lapses? No? I thought that was, sorry, that was what I was asking.
Okay, so we move to another motion. Call for another motion. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I would like to move the recommendation with the amendment that is as per attachment 2.
Can we have attachment 2 on the screen, and can you confirm that's the motion that you're moving, Councillor Arnott?
It's the attachment 2 wording is yet to be put up there. Just waiting for the wording to be completed. Thank you, Mayor White.
So that's the wording up there now?
Yes, that's my understanding. So that would go through to the version which allows people to put questions directly from the floor without the need to put them in writing.
Yep, Councillor Hart.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Well, I'm not sure that was entirely correct for attachment 2. They just have to put the topic in writing. Is that
correct?
Register
they just need
and
to
put
put the topic in
okay,
writing.
thank you.
Yep.
So, if I may clarify
Confirm
that, Mayor White. That so tonight we had an individual put forward a question in respect to off-leash dog parks. But he may have said, put in writing, I'm going to talk about off-leash dog parks, but I noted that the person didn't have any other detailed notes, and he would be able to ask his question in detail post that.
So that's the motion you're moving. Please confirm,
Is that
Councillor Arnott.
with the sort of process
what
we'd be
we've got
looking
up on the screen?
Yes, that's what
Yep,
I'm moving. Thank you.
you. Do I have a seconder for that?
Happy to second it.
Councillor Harsh. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Arnott, you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor White. Look, I really actually sympathise with option one, and I understand why Councillor Potter wanted to put that in there. I get the governance requirement, that the ease that would do. I get it that putting questions in writing will assist our council officers to provide the answers that people are asking for. We witnessed that tonight. We had a significant number of questions in writing. They were all answered appropriately because the staff had opportunity to research and provide good answers immediately. Without that, we end up with circumstances that we've seen in many times where questions are taken on notice and they need to be responded to later in writing rather than at the meeting, and that's probably a less appropriate outcome. But I think we need to have that flexibility where you have a person that comes to a meeting and they might even think of a topic when they're at the meeting. They've looked at the agenda, something's said, and they'll say, look, I'd like to ask a question. And they need to be able to do that without writing out an essay. So this allows that to occur. In all other respects, it answers the requirements for the good governance of council. These rules are appropriate. They allow for the smooth and efficient conduct of council meetings and to deal with business that council comes up that you, as the community, need us to deal with on a day-to-day basis. These rules are especially important in times of disagreement, if you like, and that provides a way forward for our councillors to work together for resolution of items so that we can have a positive outcome. It provides guidance for conduct, for the authority for the mayor to deal with the process of meetings, and for the election of the lead role, such as mayor and the deputy mayor. So all of this will be out for the community to have input to, and I really encourage them to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Harsh?
I reserve.
Reserve. Councillor Finnegan?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think, really, I think that these changes are aimed at giving the council organisation the ability to silence dissent amongst the community and even councillors. I don't think the community should be prevented from asking questions. I don't think the community should be required to write down the topic of their question just to come and ask a question at a council meeting. I think that, you know, it should be seen as the right of the community to come forth and ask a question without having to give pre-advance warning to the council organisation as to what they're going to ask, whether it be even just writing down the topic item that they're going to be asking on. I don't think, you know, so this is why I disagree with essentially both the options that were presented in this report. I also find it strange that these changes, this governance rules review and the changes therefore and the groundwork for them were prioritised ahead of many other things which were far more critical to council, whether it be the CEO performance reviews that we were behind on, appointing an independent chair, considering for that particular committee, considering that role remained vacant for, as I understand it, was nearly 12 months. And the fact that there was councillor dissent amongst whether or not we undergo this governance rules review or we allow the next council to do it in a few months' time, as they will naturally want to review governance rules as they come in. You know, I just find it very strange that, considering the precious little time that we have left in this council term, this is what we're focusing our energy on, rather than doing good work for the community, or, you know, rather than whether it be dealing with the Ross's Point issue head on and dedicating more energy towards that. That's why I'm voting against this.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. A lot of work has gone into this, and I think it was necessary work, given some of the issues that have been occurring over the last few months. And these rules tell us how to do things, when to do things, and how things can happen during our meetings. And I think they did need to be tidied up, and I was happy to put in the work. When I moved option 1, it wasn't necessarily an endorsement of some of the things in these government's rules. I wanted to get them out so we can hear from the public about their thoughts on how we conduct our meetings, in particular around question time. So I just want to make that clear that I'm not necessarily disagreeing with Councillor Finnegan at all, but I just wanted to get them out and let's hear from the community. I encourage everyone who takes an interest in council to have a look at them.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, a couple of things. I also, with the draft governance rules, I have some concerns around the short time frame to lodge rescission motions, but the item that I do have the most concern about, and I am also concerned that it wasn't highlighted in the officer report, because I think sometimes people who take an interest in these things read the summary, but then sort of in the detail of these changes that are quite significant. And I think the one that's most significant to the community is around our public question time. And I fully support our open council meetings and our open public question time. I won't support submitting written questions and written questions only. And I'm not even supportive of registering a topic. The question I sort of really have asked myself is, what problem are we trying to fix? And I don't think there is a problem. I think our open question time has worked well for this community for a very long time and has served our community well. And I know on many occasions when people have spoken to me over the years, over many years, about council meetings just being, you know, a bit of a rubber stamp, a bit of a process. I encourage people to come to the council meetings and I encourage them to ask questions. And I would always, some people would say, oh, you're making decisions behind closed doors, and I'd say, come to the council meeting, come and ask a question. We've got one of the most open council meetings in the state, probably in the country, and I'm really proud of that. So I don't support any changes to that question time, and I really want to highlight it to the community. The people that take an interest in council meetings, you need to have a good look at these governance rules and the changes to your question time. It's not councillors' question time, it's the community's, it's the public's question time. You really need to have a good understanding of what changes are being proposed. So I very much encourage the community to have a look at these governance rules.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Hart, you reserved?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. The governance rules were originally last introduced in August 2020, just 2 months before the October 2020 election. If these governance rules are adopted, they'll be adopted in July, 3 months before the election, and it's quite a normal process that the council would ensure that the governance rules are up to date before a new council takes place. And of course they can change them, but they'll have a lot of things to do. And so this is just setting these rules up to be in place. As for, they were amended in 2022 to allow for hybrid meetings, and some of the things that are being done now, such as correcting rules around the mayor, the voting for selecting the mayor, some of those reflect correcting how the rules read so they comply with the Local Government Act. So that is what this is all about. I struggle to to accept that it hasn't been highlighted, the different options for the changes potentially in question time. If you go to page 131 and page 132 of the agenda, it talks about the two different options. I think requiring people to write out their full question is a step too far, and that's why I didn't second that. Simply putting the topic on would simply provide council some advance notice who might be expected to have their fingers on the pulse for an issue. If someone puts budget, well, I'd expect that the person in charge of the budget area might be making sure they've got all their documents available, and it might mean that they can answer a question which they might otherwise have to take on notice. And that's the only change to the question time. That's the only change. and this is going out for comment anyway for 6 weeks, that you have to write potentially one word to say what the topic is. This is going out for 6 weeks. I think there's no great mystery or mischief with this issue. Again, I come back to, in August 2020, just a couple of months before the election, the previous council tidied up the governance rules. If this goes out for comment as per the motion, in July 2024, 3 months before the election, the governance rules will be set in place, and of course the new council can change the governance rules, but they can do a whole lot of other things, and I don't think that this is what they will want to address on their first day. And fixing up the anomaly for the mayor alone, then the mayor voting, is important to have that in place for the new council so that they're adhering to the requirements of the Local Government Act.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Right of reply, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I'd actually just endorse Seconder Councillor Harty's comments there. He's hit on many important issues there. The greatest one being, of course, this next council can review these any time they want to, but it would be remiss of us to hand over with a governance framework that's actually out of date and not fit for purpose, which was demonstrated to us through when we were working with it. That there were areas that were just not in compliance with the current rules of state government and process, so they needed to be addressed. It would be difficult, I think, as a new council to do this. It's been an interesting process for me to get into this. I've only been a couple of years in council now, and it's been very important from my perspective to have the experience of likes of Councillor Potter and especially Councillor Hart to feed into this process. And Councillor Hanson over here and Mayor White, that's got a bit more experience than myself, to feed into this, to say, well, this is what we found, this is why we're looking to this. There's a few things I tried to push back on, ended up relenting and saying, well, okay, I didn't know that, thank you very much for that. I understand why it's worded that way now, and it's an appropriate process to have in place. That is not something that a new council would necessarily know. We were going to elections. The people could throw us all out and put a whole new council in. That is their prerogative, and I would respect that. But we should leave a process in place that's going to work for them. And I would imagine that they will go through the same process in 4 years' time before they hand over, if they find some things that are not in place. So this review is important to point out that this is part of what our executive does. This is why they're there for. This helps to make this council continue to run and function appropriately. This is why we employ good people with experience and with the knowledge to put these things together on our behalf. So I commend this to the community for consultation, and maybe we'll re-look at that question section, but to simply write down one word. And I would like you to note that before council meeting started, there was at least 3 staff members that I saw sitting over there with the gallery, prepared to talk with them and assist them in any way they could to help them put together their questions.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. We're over time. Thank you. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried 5-1. Division, all those in favour? Councillor Hart, Councillor Potter, Councillor White, Councillor Hanson, Councillor Arnott. Those against? Councillor Finnegan. Thank you. Break. And I think it's a good time to call for a quick break. We'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Excellent.
Good to go? Good to go. Thank you, everybody, for coming back. We're now up to item 9.6, adoption of the flag policy. The purpose of this report is to consider the adoption of the revised flag policy following feedback from the community. Councillors, before I move a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? Question?
I'd just like
Councillor
to flag.
Finnegan.
Yeah, apologies. Is that working? Yeah, okay, sorry. I'd just like to flag that I've got a motion when the time comes.
So you haven't got a
deal with this
question?
item. Yep.
Any questions? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. If the recommendation was adopted, that's the recommendation on page 228, and for some reason it was thought to change the schedule of that's in the policy that lists various flags and when they'll be flown, would it be a council decision, as in council law decision, to change that schedule? Would that come to the councillors for a decision?
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Mr Sheeran?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, so if there was proposed changes to the actual schedule, which identifies flags that would be flown on certain times ongoing, so you know, as an example every year, our intention is that we would bring that back to council.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. If the policy is adopted as it is, which gives the CEO the right to decide upon community representation about flags, would there be a mechanism for the CEO to perhaps share that decision with councillors via email or something before
CEO?
Release?
Thanks, Councillor Potter, through the chair. Yes, absolutely. There'd be plenty of opportunity. Nothing would restrict the CEO such that they would have to act unilaterally or without a discussion with councillors, nor even make a decision. CEO could refer the matter to the chamber, which I could anticipate happening if there was a contentious issue. Yep.
Contentious issue, yep. Any other questions? Councillor Arnott, I think you had up your hand.
Thank you, Mayor Reich. The policy has got quite a list of approved flags in the schedule there and a process for application. Assuming that the flagpole was not in use as per the agenda items, the schedule in there, what sort of circumstances would you envisage that a flag approval would not be given?
CEO?
So requests, whether they're considered by the CEO or the councillors as council, would be assessed against the principles outlined in whatever policy council finally adopts. So they'd be not offensive, they'd need to be things of significance to the community, etc. Things that don't fit the policy would be the ones that would be not supported. I'm not sure if I've answered that question.
I think so. So from the perspective of the CEO, the policy provides a reasonable guideline for directing approval.
Yes, and I've not had any concerns about the ability to use it to guide decisions, and as Councillor Potter has pointed out, then if I think there's something that might be benefiting from a broader conversation, it doesn't stop that happening either.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillors, we've got a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Councillor Finnegan.
Yep, I'd like to move the motion. I believe the governance team got that one.
Can you
Yep, where are we?
read out your motion, please?
Yep, so it is different to the officer recommendation in that it adds the words at point one. Point one now reads, adopts a flag policy. Attachment 1 includes a flag schedule guiding the use of council's community and ceremonial flagpoles, subject to an amendment to the policy section titled Guidelines Policy Details, should remove any discretion of the Chief Executive Officer, replace with words to the effect that requests that vary from the policy or protocol must be approved through resolution of council. And that is up on the screen there, yes.
Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, can I just...
Yeah, you want to add?
Sorry, Chair. It has just occurred to me, and I know that we looked for sections that were relevant to this earlier. It's just occurred to me that under responsibilities, there are a number of dot points about what the Chief Executive Officer may be responsible for, and if council is seeking to remove all discretion or ability for the CEO to do anything, then I think you should also recommend that the first two dot points under responsibilities also be deleted. Councillor Finnegan, it's your motion, but that would avoid inconsistency.
Sorry, yes, thank you, CEO. I'm happy to do that. Just noting that we would need the wording, and I'm happy to be guided by the CEO as to what that wording
So
may
I'd
be.
suggest further words at the end of dot point number 1 to add, comma, and also delete the first two dot points under the responsibilities section of the policy.
Councillor Finnegan, can you confirm that's your motion with the changes?
Yes, I can. I believe Councillor Hart may have a question that
So,
arises from it.
so you're moving that motion. I'm calling for a seconder.
Yes.
Question
Ask a
first. Yep.
Well, I'd just like to, I mean, it's all very well to remove those two dot points, but can we just have a shared understanding? Are we talking about page 236 of the agenda and the dot point? I mean, is that, for a start, is that the right page for where we're altering?
Yes, Councillor Hart,
Okay.
that's the section I was referring to.
So removing the dot point that starts with the word considering requests to fly alternative flags, and also removing determining when it's appropriate to refer a request to fly an alternative flag,
My understanding is that Councillor Finnegan's intention is that that ability be removed from the CEO. In fact, you could take all of the responsibilities away and it probably wouldn't make any difference. Just looking at the resolution, or the resolution as it says there, should remove any discretion of the Chief Executive Officer, then I just struggle to reconcile that with having any left, because, for example, there's ensuring flags flow and under council's control and never flown when in damaged, faded or dilapidated condition. I think probably, as I said, it may even be worth removing the whole responsibility section and leave nothing with the CEO.
I would have thought the way through you, Mayor, the way the resolution reads is effectively removing all that section on page 236. The Chief Executive Officer is responsible for, and 4 dot points. I think I just struggle how it's worded now, how it's consistent with itself.
Councillor Finnegan.
Yeah, I will state that I expressed an opinion in the pre-meeting earlier and was provided wording by the CEO to go with my motion. I'm happy for it to be changed for clarity purposes and everything like that, and I'm happy to be led upon that. Would that be, as has been suggested, best way would be to remove all references to responsibility or discretion of the CEO from this motion? Is that...
It's a matter for councillors as to whether you wish to leave any responsibility to the CEO or none at all. If you want to leave none at all, then take out the whole section would be my suggestion, so there's no contradiction.
Yep.
And then council can resolve on every single matter to do with flags that aren't covered by the schedule.
Yep, that's what
Including
I'd prefer.
request to fly at half-mast for a death of a local citizen that may be of significance, and whether you want to tidy up dilapidated flags, councillors can determine everything.
Yep, I'm happy to take it.
Okay, we're clear with what motion Councillor Finnegan is moving?
No, I appreciate Councillor Finnegan's clarified it, but so does that mean on that page all that section has been removed?
Yep.
Is that right?
That's what my understanding is, that everything is
Councillor Finnegan,
removed.
so the wording should be to remove the section titled responsibilities. So governance team.
Yep. Okay, so we're clear now what the motion is. Everybody? And do we need to state that for people who are online with us?
I'm happy to do that, to tidy
Thank
it up. So essentially, point 1 now reads that Council will adopt the flag policy attachment 1, which includes a flag schedule guiding the use of Council's community and ceremonial flagpoles, subject to an amendment to the policy section titled Guidelines and Policy Details, should remove the section entitled Responsibilities of the CEO and be replaced with the words, the effect that the requests that vary from Council policy or protocol must be approved through resolutions of Council.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Councillors, do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanson, is it to be opposed? Councillor Potter? Councillor Finnegan?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I do believe the work that has been done on the flag policy, especially in the light of the new ceremonial flagpole that has been erected out the front of Colac, is very good work, and I commend the work of officers for getting us to this stage. My motion differs in the sense that I believe that the reality of this world we live in is that flying of flags can be considered political in nature, and I feel that the community, if they want to have a say about the flags that are flown or not flown, should be able to lobby someone directly around and have a say to their elected officials to say, I would not like to see this flag flown, or I'd like to see this flag flown. And the best way to do that is to, as I've pointed out, allow councillors to have the discretion around what flags are flown and the circumstances under which they're flown. Now, at the end of the day, councillors are decision makers, and councillors alone should be the one making the decision whether or not we should be, what flags we should be flying. Our community can easily ask questions of councillors and lobby councillors, but we know it's not, it's not particularly easy or possible for the community to lobby the CEO over a decision. And I feel this at least gives the community the opportunity to have a say and be able to try and influence an outcome, or at least have their thoughts heard if they disagree or particularly agree with any particular proposed flag flying. And yeah.
Thanks,
So
Councillor
that's
Finnegan. Councillor Hanson?
I'll reserve.
Reserve. Councillor Potter?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, pleased to see the flag policy. I think it's very proud to see that flagpole up, and I think it's a great asset for the community. I did have some initial concerns with the draft policy, and I know we had a number of submitters to our policy. Some of those views align with my own, so I'm now very happy with the finished product, so to speak. I do think the CEO should have the ability to process applications from the community to be able to fly a flag on the flagpole. And having asked a question of the CEO, and I knew the answer before I asked it, the CEO, any CEO, would consult with councillors should there be a contentious or possibly a political motive behind the flying of a flag, politically provocative motive behind flying a flag. So I'm very comfortable with the policy as it is. I encourage community groups, our multicultural community, to talk to us about flying their flag on the national days and all the rest of it. I don't want to have to call a special meeting of councillors to decide whether the Sudanese community can fly their national flag. I'm pretty confident that's a decision that the CEO can make. And as I said, if there was a contentious decision, I've got no doubt that we would be consulted on that and err on the side of caution. So, councillors, I'm not supporting Councillor Finnegan's motion.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Hart?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment that removes the words that's in point 1 that starts with subject to an amendment right through to the word council. I'm not changing point 2, 3 or 4. My amendment is just to remove the extra words in point 1. So that is the words to be removed, subject to an amendment to the policy section titled Guidelines Policy Details, to remove any authority of the CEO, and also to delete the section entitled Responsibilities of the CEO, to be replaced with words to the effect the requests that vary from the policy or protocol must be approved through resolution of council. So that's my amendment. I think you'll find that'll probably read like the officer recommendation, essentially, if those words were removed.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Arnott.
Just clarifying, so that essentially reads very similar to the officer's recommendation.
I think that's what Councillor Hart has.
Well, that's my intention, and if there's any other points that are dropped off, the amendment will be included, which I think was writing to submitters, thanking them for their feedback. Is that still in there? So my intention is essentially to remove the words that would take it back to the officer recommendation.
I'd be happy to second that amendment if it's valid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Question, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you. My one question was, and obviously, does that amendment under our under our governance rules stick, because it's taking the motion to, I guess, sort of taking to somewhat of an opposite motion? And then, no, this is a question, because I'm just I'm happy for it to be moved if it does fit. And this is just
It's a question. Thank you. Okay, question, Councillor Hart.
I think if you look up the rules on amendments and the governance rules, this is not making a directly opposite resolution, and amendments can remove words, can add words. But you know, you're the mayor.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's opposite. I don't think it's opposite. So we've got an amendment in front of us. Councillor Hart has moved. We've got Councillor Arnott seconding that amendment. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Finnegan.
So does this amendment now mean the CEO can make the decision to whatever flag can be flown on that fourth flagpole?
Well, it takes it back to the officer recommendation, which means the CEO can make the decision in the 4 points that are listed on page, whatever that page number was, but I might be able to... I have to smile at my computer.
236.
236.
Thanks, my computer.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. So we've got Councillor Finnegan opposing the amendment. Councillor Hart, do you want to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And I just note that I'm talking to the amendment at this stage.
That's right. Yep.
I think first of all, if the schedule of flags that are approved in that schedule were ever to change, that would require a council resolution, even with the draft policy. I think that if there's... So I think really we're dealing with those responsibilities that are under the CEO, some of which were deciding not to fly a damaged flag. Some basic responsibilities shouldn't need to come back to council for decisions, but also in terms of someone applying for a community flag or someone from the community, that's what the policy's for. It says how that decision will be made. I would expect that a CEO of the day would, as of course, be talking to the mayor of the day, and if there was any contentious issue, that the matter would be brought to councillors and potentially council. I don't think that it makes sense to formulate a policy as such as this and then say, well, we're just going to make every decision on it has to come for a council decision. Why do you have the policy? And I've certainly got confidence that between CEOs, mayors and councillors, that if there was a contentious issue, it would be brought to the attention and considered. You really don't want to get tied up with special meetings and council meetings if a flag's damaged, and now the CEO, under the alternative resolution, would have to come to a council meeting to decide whether or not to damage or withdraw a damaged flag, let alone anything else. I think it's a bit of overreach.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott?
Thank you, Mayor Watt. Yeah, look, we already give an instrument of appointment and authorisation to delegation authorities to our executive for many, many different things, to spend millions of dollars to complete projects of significant size, yada, yada, yada. And that's because to come back to the council for every little decision just would be ridiculous. So we provide a framework around that, so to guide the executive and the CEO on decision-making process. So this is what this does. It provides that good guidance. That was a question that I asked the CEO for that. CEO and the Mayor, they meet probably almost daily during the week. I would suggest that if a flag application come in, that the CEO said, look, this is a bit different. I have a conversation with the Mayor about that, and the Mayor would put that out to the councillors. That would be, because that happens now. There is nothing new about any of this, so I would support this. Thank you.
The amendment. Any Councillor Finnegan?
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the inputs of Councillors Hart and Arnott in speaking for this amendment. Obviously, I'm speaking against it. The point has been made that one of the points that's been made is that every little decision shouldn't come back to council, and I understand that, and we do have frameworks around this. But one of the arguments that has been made is that we don't want to be holding unscheduled meetings and the like on a regular basis. The reality is we already do that fairly consistently. And I think that, if we're already holding a significant amount of unscheduled meetings, there's nothing more to it to hold a few more, especially when matters like this arise where people want to, where there's an application for a flag or something of that ilk to be raised on a certain day, and that there may be people in the community who want to have their say about that, and I think they should be heard and be able to ask questions at a meeting convened to decide whether or not we're going to raise a flag, and also be able to lobby the decision makers in the process. So, again, that's why I'm speaking against Councillor Hart's amendment.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I've got an amendment in front of us, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Hart's amendment? Those against? It's carried 4-2. Thank you, councillors. Division. All those in favour of Councillor Hart's amendment? Councillor Hart, Councillor Potter, Councillor White, Councillor Arnott. Against the amendment? Councillor Finnegan, Councillor Hanson. Thank you. Now we go back to the substantive motion. So do I have a mover for the substantive motion? We've done it? Oh, it's been moved. That's right.
Thanks, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank the submitters who have put submissions in on this policy. I think a flag policy is important about inclusiveness and recognition and displaying that at the community flagpole. I think the list of various flags that are included is an important step, and were that to ever vary if we pass this, then that would require a council resolution. I think some improvements that have come about from the submissions include limiting the flying of particular flags for 7 days. It did have 30 days. Also ensuring that a council flag is flown when there are no other flags, so you don't have an empty flagpole, as it were. Flying of the RSL flag at certain appropriate times, and around Anzac Day, Remembrance Day in particular, and certainly some clarity and concerns which have been addressed in not flying flags on the pole for a half-mast, and sort of complicating that issue a little bit. So many of the issues that have been raised in submissions have been taken into account, and I certainly look forward to us accepting this policy and seeing the different flags that are flown throughout the year.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I'm speaking to the substantive motion as it is. The adoption or the installation of another flagpole was to meet some community concern about the use of our official flagpoles for the flying of other ceremonial type community flags. And so this facilitates that in an appropriate manner. And this was meant to be simple. Put up a pole, have it used for the community, have a program around where flags of a certain kind can be recognised without even need to be applied for every year. They just happen. That's great because they're regular events. And also a process where the CEO is guided to how to approve new applications to get up. And so if we have the local footy team or the basketball team have a great game and they win and they want to put it up to say, look at us, look what we did for the weekend, this can happen. It can happen overnight. If we have to wait 6 weeks, we've got to put an application for council 6 weeks beforehand, you've got it up to council. God forbid we're going to spend thousands to call special council meetings so that we can approve a flag to be flown. I think this is the way to go, so therefore I would endorse the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hanson, right of reply. Sorry,
I did
reserve.
Look, I did second the original motion, but, I was probably not going to, in the end, support it. And we've gone through this strange process where the amendment has just turned it back into the Office of Recommendation. I just want to clarify, I don't think we'd spend thousands of dollars calling special meetings or unscheduled meetings. This council has meetings all the time. They're on the agenda. But that said, I don't think it is necessary to bring it back to a meeting. I hope there's really no need to lobby or no need for political flags. It is a community flagpole, to fly flags of, good community services and good community causes. And I think then, as has been flagged, that if there are issues down the track, it can always come back to council, God forbid, maybe even a rescission motion, who knows. But it can come back to council. Everything can bounce back, as we know. It's like a boomerang, this place. So I think it is worth... I support the policy. I thank the community for their feedback, and it was very interesting feedback and really mixed views. But I think it is... We don't have to bring the flags that have flown down Murray Street, don't have to come to council. People love those flags, and I hope people really enjoy this flag pole as well.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Right of reply, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. And as has been noted, there was an amendment that has essentially turned my proposed motion around to very much in line with the officer's recommendation. I will now, even though I moved the substantive motion, I will now be voting against. And as I said, I think really, I don't think anyone on this council disagrees that having different flags flying is good. It's just where I differ from some of my colleagues is that I feel that councillors should have the final say over what flags go up instead of the CEO. Flags, as I've pointed out before, can be political just by their nature, just by their very existence. You talk about flags of certain countries can even conjure up very strong images or ideas of what people may support just by, having a flag flying. So, and I think that some people in the community may want to have their say, and I feel that our community should be able to ask questions about proposals to fly different flags, and I feel the best way to have our community be able to do that is do it at a council meeting or to lobby councillors who will in turn hopefully vote on whether or not that particular flag goes up. I also like to thank submitters who made very good points, as was stated by Councillor Hart, particularly around the council flag being default, having flags going up for 7 days instead of 28, the idea that flags that go on the ceremonial flagpole don't go up at half-mast. I think that is all very good feedback. As I said, just the main bone of contention is that I feel that in this particular area, councillors should have the final say about what goes up because flags are, by their very nature, political, unfortunately. It's just a reality we live in. So I'll be voting against the substantive motion that has been amended that I initially put up. Hopefully that's clear.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 5-1. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Hart, Councillor Potter, Councillor White, Councillor Hanson, Councillor Arnott. Against? Councillor Finnegan.
Excuse me,
Thank you.
Mayor. To reset the system, please.
Yes, we need to just take a bit of time
Just
to
give
look
us
at
an
our tech.
opportunity to reset and see if that clears.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're going to reset. So we adjourn for 3 minutes, 5 minutes while we reset the tech. No, not half an hour. Thank you, Councillor Hart. Okay, I think our text has been resolved. Am I correct? We'll just wait on Councillor Arnott. Thank you, everybody. Our tech is now resolved, so we'll move on to our next item, which is item 9.7, an update on implementation of the cat curfew. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the implementation of the cat confinement order that was introduced in November 2023. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, does anyone wish to ask a question of officers? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I just ask the officers, please, if there's been any concerns or complaints come back from residents in respect to this policy and its implementation.
Through you,
Mr.
Mayor.
McNeil.
I don't believe there has been negative feedback received about the order since it came in. So there was certainly some positive feedback received immediately upon the introduction of the order back in November last year, but there hasn't been any official feedback received since then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
Given the some of the contents of the report and everything like that in relation to cats, would it perhaps, I guess I should ask this of officers, what would be the best way to adopt a stray cat or something like that in the Colac Otway Shire that may have been caught under this policy?
Mr. McNeil.
Through you, Mayor. Certainly, Council's Local Laws Department, one of the functions that they have is to assist in sort of rehousing cats that don't have a home, and I think we've been fairly successful as a council in doing that to a high degree, which is great. But I'd encourage you to let anyone know that who would like a cat, just contact our local law staff and they'll be able to assist.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil. Any other questions? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I note that the recommendation is that we continue with just the 12-hour cat curfew, and I'm happy for that recommendation today. My question is, would there be any problem with perhaps having another look at this perhaps in 2 years' time? Because a lot of councils are moving to 24-hour curfews, and I just wonder if there'd be any harm in just adding to this recommendation that suggesting that perhaps in a period, what period would that be? I'm suggesting 2 years, because I just think that it's something that needs to be on the radar, as it were, this issue.
Mr. McNeil.
Through you, Mayor. It would be up to council to put forward an alternative motion if that was the intention. If council was to move a motion, and whether it be 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, then officers would implement that if that's what was passed by council.
Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this? Councillor Hart.
Could I move basically the recommendation but with an extra point so that it would read that council considers an update on this issue to council by 30th of June 2026? Would that be 2 years? Happy to change it if it suits the CEO.
Does that work for council officers?
Thanks, Councillor Hart. My preference is maybe move it to the end of September, only to move it away from a very, very busy end of year period.
Excellent point. So that council considers an update on this policy by 30th of September 2026.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott.
I'm happy to second the motion. Is that effect?
Second the motion. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I think this was an important issue when Council introduced this cat curfew, and we've got a thorough report on what the outcome is in terms of cats being handed in and rehoused, and ideally that the cats aren't just running about between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. That's the situation at the moment, and I support that. I do think the council should consider, and the comments were made at the time of the local laws review, whether that's enough or whether there might be a 24-hour curfew. I'm not suggesting we do this at this time, but by adding the point 3, then that would give another 2 years for this to run a little bit more, and would be an opportunity to consider whether the council of the day just continues with that arrangement or something different.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I'm actually happy to support the motion and the notion that the council, this be brought to the radar of future council to reconsider. They might decide to just leave it as it is, and that will be fine. That will be the determination of the council at the time, with community feedback, and I guess with the experience of the implementation of the regulations themselves. We note that there's been no real substantive change in the activity of cats being caught or handed to council or rehoused or whatever since before and after this was put in place. So it's actually providing an opportunity to protect our wildlife. I used to be cat owners at home. We had them. We tried to keep them in as much as possible. We've noted since that we no longer have cats how much more wildlife we have around our property. We're on a few acres, and it certainly has improved the wildlife, the bird numbers around. So they do damage. I'd like people to think about that and to continue to support this policy the best way they can. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No other councillor wishes to speak. Councillors, I'll call for...
Before you take the vote, Mayor, I think technically point 3 should just read considers an update, because that council is at the start of the resolution anyway. Yeah, I don't think, yeah, correct.
Okay, so can you just read that out so our people
So the
online
extra
know exactly
point,
what we're talking about?
The extra point reads considers an update on this policy by end of September 2026. And it follows because that council applies to all of those 3 points.
Thanks, Councillor Hart and Councillor Arnott.
Sorry. Can we also change the word policy to order? It's actually an order under the Domestic Animals Act. Thanks.
I'm, as always, happy to cooperate.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott, I'm thinking you're agreeing.
Yes,
so we now go to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 9.8, Apollo Bay Aquatic Centre Funding Agreement Review. The purpose of this report is to review the Apollo Bay Aquatic Centre Funding Agreement in accordance with the resolution of Council at its 28 March meeting 2018. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask questions of officers? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thank you. My question relates to the 3 swimming pools that Colac Otway has at different times supported. Do we have any figures on the approximately contribution from rates per visit for, say, Blue Water Fitness Centre visits, Apollo Bay Pool visits, and the funds that have been committed to Lavers Hill Pool, notwithstanding that they're not being paid at the moment per visit? So I'm trying to understand the ratepayer contribution per visit for these 3 different pools.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sheeran.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, we do have some average cost per visit of each of the facilities. For Apollo Bay, it's around about $26 per visit. Blue Water equates to somewhere between $4.20 and $5.40, and the reason we don't have a more exact number is the visitations are an estimate, and Lavers Hill is around about $11.20.
Thank you, Mr. Sheeran. Any other questions? Councillor Arnott.
So just to clarify, that is per head of person per visit?
Through you, Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this report? Councillor Hart. The motion you wish to move is the officer recommendation.
The recommendation for this one.
Thank you. Is it to be seconded? Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. This is basically a report on how the pool at Apollo Bay is going since it's been enclosed and heated, and I think that was a very important project that Council has supported. I do think it's worth keeping in mind those contributions from ratepayers per visits, with Apollo Bay $26, Lavers Hill not quite getting the funds at the moment, but what's committed subject to signing of that agreement, $11.20, and Blue Water $4.20 to $5.40. Obviously, the Blue Water Fitness Centre is a larger facility, has a larger catchment, so you would expect that the capacity to have the contribution per visit is lower, but I accept and I acknowledge the importance of the Apollo Bay pool, but I think we just need to be at least aware that that is a most generously funded per visit of those three facilities. Lavers Hill's a small facility, and as you would guess, that the amount of visits are less than Apollo Bay, but even that contribution is less than half than Apollo Bay. I think that's something that is needs to, when there's discussions about different areas of the Shire, that significant contribution, we need to be aware of that.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Hart. He did sum up pretty well. Just highlighting again that these facilities are subsidised by the ratepayer, by council. We try hard to keep that subsidy down, but it's the nature of the beast, to be honest with you. When you're a service organisation, a service business, especially with our geography and outlying areas, we do have to subsidise some of these public facilities. I note that since 2020-21, usage of the Apollo Bay Aquatic Centre has more than doubled, so it shows that it's a worthwhile investment by council in the community of Apollo Bay, and again the opening hours have increased substantially as well, so congratulations on the use of the facility there, but as Councillor Hart points out, it is heavily subsidised as far as these types of facilities go. Happy to make that subsidy, but we just have to be mindful of that fact moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I endorse the comments of Councillor Potter and Councillor Hart in respect to this, and it's quite informative information that Councillor Hart had brought out by the officers. And I guess it's important to point out that often Blue Water gets hammered for the amount of money that was spent to that facility, but in fact it's on a head per basis. It's the lowest subsidy of them all. And that's simply because of volume of numbers. But it's appropriate for the council to assist these sorts of programs for the community. If we would rely on private enterprise to deliver it by themselves, it would fail. The cost would be prohibitive, people would not be able to attend, learning to swim is probably one of the most important things, safety issues that we could have our children attend to. And pools are a major resource to do that, and especially in a seaside community like Apollo Bay. So the value of this is not measured by what it costs per head, but what the value of it is to the community, the importance of it. And so that's why we support this. And also to consider that for the Bay, it means that the community and their school have access to a pool facility that they would not otherwise achieve without our assistance. And it provides a much better facility for the school and for the community.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, I just want to say that it is a fantastic facility down there. The community did an amazing job getting the roof built over that pool and getting the pool reconditioned, but they do rely heavily on council's support. And I think it was very worthwhile pointing out how expensive it is. It is a real luxury for that community down there. They are very lucky to have it. It is a really nice pool, a really nice facility, certainly well heated, well used by the community. I have swum laps in that pool myself not that long ago. I think I might have been about the only person there, so it is a real luxury. But it is something I think that future councils will have to watch. The cost, I think it is run well, it is managed well, but with these indoor facilities, with these pools, they are very expensive, and it is our most expensive pool in the Shire.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Any other councillors? I now put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried 6-0. Thank you. Move on to the next item. 9.9 is the Q3 performance report against the 23-24 annual plan. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? No questions. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Arnott, have a seconder.
For clarity, I'm moving the recommendations contained in point 3.
Thank you. The officer's recommendation. Seconder. Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. Look, it's with pleasure that we bring this to the community, and thank the executive for their feedback on this and the continued reporting to council. This is a sort of performance that we can get measured as a council, as an effectiveness for the community, for them to see how we're performing in delivering the programs. It also helps to ascertain the performance of our own staff and our CEO to make sure that we're actually staying on track. So this keeps everyone honest. It keeps the council laws honest to make sure that we are on top of things, that we understand what's happening. It keeps our staff honest that they're delivering to us and to the community so that the community can see what's happening. So I commend this for the observation by the community. If you have any questions, give us a call. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Potter.
No, I don't wish to speak. Thanks, Mayor. It's a report for noting, an important report.
Report for noting.
Yeah, encourage
Thank
people
you.
to look at it.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 9.10. Birregurra Structure Plan Community Reference Group appointment. The purpose of this report is to establish a community reference group to inform the Birregurra Structure Plan project and appoint members to the committee, and officers have provided a revised recommendation. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers?
Can we see the revised recommendation,
Revised
please?
recommendation should be on the screen. Any questions? Councillors, the officers have provided this recommendation. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this recommendation? Councillor Hart, to be seconded. Councillor Potter. Councillor Hart.
In speaking to this, can I ask, well, I can ask a question because local laws allow it. My question through you, Mayor, I just wonder if point 3 should be saying makes them public after the people concerned have been notified or something like that, or do I just assume that that's going to happen? Okay, I'm willing to, I'll speak now if you want to.
Yeah, thank you.
Essentially, this is a community reference group being set up to deal with the review of the Birregurra structure plan. I'd like to thank everyone who's expressed interest in this particular project. The short explanation about what this all is about is a planning review to see what might be allowed in different areas of Birregurra, whether the town boundary may or may not expand, whether the density may or may not change. And it's something that was done quite some years ago when the sewage was connected to Birregurra. It's appropriate now that it's reviewed once again, and eventually I would take a guess that this will lead to a planning amendment to adopt a new structure plan. I don't know what that will be. That's up for the new council and the community reference group and the public to have their input. But at this stage, we're setting this group up. And again, I thank the people concerned who expressed interest.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, happy to support this motion, Mayor. This is a very important working group for the community of Birregurra. Birregurra community have been looking forward to this occurring. Birri is growing. There's infill, various pieces of development, and needs to be done well, and future needs need to be considered, and this is what this group will do. I hope they enjoy the opportunity to work with some of our expert staff and enjoy the experience, whilst also making a extremely valuable contribution to the future of Birri.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? 6-0. Motion is carried. Move on to item 9.11. The purpose of this report is to appoint an acting mayor for a specified period when the mayor may be unable to perform duties. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? No questions. Councillors, the officers have provided a question, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say I've got a motion. That was why I was putting my hand up.
You've got a motion?
Yep. So the motion differs from what is on the screen currently, in that where it says the 31st of May, it should be deleted to read the 24th of May. So bring forward that, the 27th of May, I should say, my bad. Bring forward that period by a few days. This would essentially have the effect of appointing Councillor Potter to the acting mayoral role for a period of 4 weeks.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? Thank you. Councillor Finnegan, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you. I do have some words written. As noted, if this motion passes, Councillor Potter will be the acting mayor for 4 weeks. And I'm supportive of Councillor Potter becoming the acting mayor for this period. I would like to note that if we wouldn't have had to have appointed an acting mayor if we filled the deputy mayor role back when we voted for it, but that's where we're at. And I'd also like to note, were Councillor Potter to take the increased mayoral salary for this period of 4 weeks, it cost council in the realm of an extra $6,000 for just 4 weeks of coverage. should note that Councillor Potter has graciously made the decision not to take the pay rise for the period, but this should not be expected of all councillors who want to put their hand up to fill in as an acting mayor if the time arises, as it would essentially equate to completing a temporary full-time job for less than minimum wage. This could be a role that would be filled by, this could lead to no councillors wanting to put their hand up, and a councillor feels like putting their hand up. Someone who perhaps is already working full-time and may need to take time off to complete the role would lead to them stepping up into a more senior role for a significant period unpaid, and that should never be expected as the norm. Lastly, just as I sign off and move this motion, hopefully it passes, I'd like to wish the Mayor well in a time off, including on your trip to Sweden.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Councillor Potter for being prepared to take on this role. In times past, we would have had a deputy mayor, but of course, the Local Government Act changed and required that they be paid an extra $20,000 a year for that role. And apart from one, we haven't had a deputy mayor since. I would like to thank Councillor White and note that Councillor White will be available and attending and would have taken over for the June meeting. I think it's always a challenge for any councillor or mayor that if you try to get a few weeks away, I think it's worthwhile if you can navigate and still attend the monthly meeting. If you tried to never miss any meeting, you'd basically get no time away except perhaps in January. But even then, as we see from Colac Otway Shire's history, one mayor had a very busy time when there were those unfortunate fires in 2015. So I think it's quite reasonable that any councillor would try to take some time off. And I do thank Councillor White for making sure that she'll be back in time for the June meeting, and Councillor Potter for being prepared to take on the role in the meantime.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Vote against, carried 6-0. Moving on to item 9.12, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation, Planning and Environment Act 1987, Peter Jones. The purpose of this report is to appoint Peter Jones, Senior Planning Compliance Officer, as an authorised officer under section 1474 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, does anyone wish to ask a question? No questions. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Councillor Arnott, is it to be seconded? Councillor Hanson, is it to be opposed? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. This is a fairly straightforward motion. Just authorises the appropriate person within council to carry out their duties as prescribed within the role of their employment. So that ensures that work can actually be done for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson. Any other councillor wish to speak? Thank you. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Potter, you wish to speak? You want to vote?
No, I'm voting, Mayor.
You're keen.
You're
very
calling
keen.
for a vote.
I'll call for a vote. All those in favour? Carried 6-0. Thank you. Very enthusiastic, Councillor Potter. Item 9.13, Instrument of Delegation, Port of Apollo Bay. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider and endorse the proposed changes to the Port of Apollo Bay Instrument of Delegation from the Port Manager to members of Council staff, and the Instrument of Delegation from the Waterway Manager. Councillors, before I call for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. In relation to this, these instruments of delegation and the like, will this have the effect of appointing any roles, reappointment of the roles such as Port Manager or Harbour Master to anyone in particular in the organisation?
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. No, delegations are to positions rather than individuals, and so this is just an update to the delegations that sit with this particular position.
And
Follow-up question?
And a follow-up is, so there's no delegation of the duties of harbour master or anything of that ilk in relation to the Apollo Bay? Some of those duties haven't been moved around, or are they remaining
So
where they
Council's
were?
already made a number of delegations to various officers, including the Port Manager. We update those every 6 months when legislation changes, etc. And we go through a review process. So there are already existing delegations that have been made. This just updates those delegations, and as Council and the community is aware, we're really only managing the port till the 30th of June this year, and then that will transition, and so the delegations will be no longer relevant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. Any other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to the matter? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Arnott. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Another straightforward operational matter that we have to deal with, but very, very important. And if you look through the list of duties or delegations in this report, you'll see how varied the activities are at the Port of Apollo Bay. And I think our team do a great job down there, and they need to continue to be able to do that job, hence an update on the delegations.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you. This adjustment delegation just brings us into line with requirements of the Act. So thank the officers for preparing this, and I endorse Councillor Potter's comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? 6-0, the motion is carried. Moving on. Item 9.14 is the report of informal meetings of councillors. Please note that this item is to report the informal meetings of councillors and does not require a decision. You have a question, Councillor Hart.
Yes, well, despite what you've just said, Mayor, I'd like to ask whether you would allow me to move a motion because of the fact that some of the reports are in errors. And if you're happy to, at least, perhaps you'd like to just hear what I want to move, which would be the council note that while a council decision is not required on this report, it is highlighted there are errors in the report issued in the agenda, and is noted these will be corrected and reissued in the minutes to the meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. That's a good point. So you'll move that motion? Have we got it up on the screen?
I'll second.
Councillor Hart, is that the motion up on the screen? Yep. Thank you. Will it be seconded?
Well, I think I'll second.
Councillor
it. Sorry,
Finnegan?
I didn't realise you were up.
Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, just so that as much for councillors and the public that there's no great controversy, but some of the declarations of interest, it wasn't clear that people had left a meeting due to a declaration of interest, conflict of interest, which they had done. And I think it's very important to have those records straight, so that if anyone looks at these for some reason in 3, 6, 12 months' time, as does happen from time to time, it's clear that the relevant councillors left the room because they declared a conflict of interest. And that wasn't clear in how they were attached to the agenda, and will be sorted out for the minutes if this is passed.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Finnegan? No. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote on Councillor Hart's motion. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried 6-0. Thanks, Councillor Hart. Now move on to item 10.1. It's a notice of motion around the Great Ocean Road Regional Tourism. Have a break. Did you? Councillors, we might have a break before we move into these next two items. What do councillors feel? You want to keep moving? Keep moving? Yep. All right, we'll keep moving. Okay. All right, so before I move before I ask for a motion, do councillors have any questions around the notice of motion? Councillor Finnegan.
Yes, it is a question to, I guess, officers. Considering we have been budgeted to give, I guess, Gort $101,500. Think as someone with a background in journalism, I could possibly pronounce that without stuttering. But the sum of 101,500 for those who are word challenged like me, apparently. My question is to officers: what are we getting out of Gort for that figure each year, and how long has the arrangement been going for?
Mr. Sheeran, thank you.
Through you, Mayor. To answer the second part of that question, off the top of my head, I'm not sure how long the arrangement has been going for. I do know that we've partnered in terms of tourism for many, many years. It hasn't always been the Great Ocean Road Regional Tourism Body, but it has been something similar, so it's been quite some time. In regards to Gort's role, their main focus is on regional marketing, advocacy, industry development, and investment attraction, so coordinating that across the region, so rather than individual councils or individual businesses doing that in isolation, with funding partnership from the state government and industry, it's a collective that looks to do that across the region.
Follow-up question, Councillor Finnegan.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess, is there anything that, my question is most of Gort's tourism advocacy, I guess I'll call it, mainly focused solely on the Great Ocean Road, or is it focused equally across the Colac Otway Shire, i.e. across areas of Colac, the areas of the Otways inland, or even out in the northern parts of our shire, which have some wonderful areas for us to visit?
Mr. Sheeran.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks. Really good question. Look, certainly no secret that the majority of visitation is along the Great Ocean Road, but particularly in more recent times, Great Ocean Road regional tourism has been focusing on areas away from the coast. We've got wonderful attractions such as Bunge Bim that has come online in recent years, that there's been a real focus. And just to clarify that the Gort stretches from essentially Torquay right through to the South Australian border. So it is a really large region, and we're pushing really hard that the focus is much broader than the Great Ocean Road, because we've got some wonderful destinations inland.
Last follow-up question, Councillor Finnegan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is, do other councils in the region and along, including those within Gort's purview and who are partnered with Gort, do they also undertake their own separate sort of tourism advertising, whether it be Corangamite or Portland, Corangamite, Glenelg, Warrnambool, anyone like that,
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Each of the councils would do more specific marketing of their particular areas. That can be done through visitor information centres or potentially tourism officers if councils have those. So the idea is that Gort does the regional approach, and then individual councils do more that specific marketing. It might be on food and beverage, or it might be specific attractions. Like for us, it might be Red Rock or the volcanic plains, those types of things, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sheeran. Any other questions? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I note that this has got a 30th of June 2025 that our membership would expire otherwise. So this would, I imagine, come in a budgetary sense to extend. Is in the absence of this motion, my question, in the absence of this motion, what opportunity or what program or schedule is in their place to ensure that council has the opportunity to review this before it's almost too late and we run into penalty situation if we don't continue?
Through you, Mayor, Gord and its member councils are actively reviewing the financial contributions to Gort. So that those discussions have already started. We're 12 months out from, more than 12 months out from the agreement ceasing. So those discussions are already being held.
Forgive me, that's a discussion between Council Executive and Gort versus a discussion at Council for funding request.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Sorry, just to clarify, those discussions will be had between the board and member council CEOs, and we would bring something to council for discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Oh, no.
Yeah, just sorry. I do apologise,
Sorry,
Mayor White.
Councillor.
Just to follow up on what Ian said, he would bring something to council. Would that have come before that 31st of March 2025 in ordinary course of action, or by that time, without this motion?
Through you, Mayor, that would have been our intention, yes.
So this motion would just, I guess, reinforce that process?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. I'm wanting to go. You can see what's happening, can't you? Councillor, I need a mover of the motion. You're moving it because it's your nom. You'll second it, Councillor Finnegan. Is it to be opposed? Not to be opposed, Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. The current agreement, as has been spoken, between Colac Otway Shire and Great Ocean Road Regional Tourism, or GORT, expires on 30th of June 2025. This motion is primarily about empowering the council to consider all options in relation to its membership of GORT, but removing the risk that if council does decide to leave, it is faced with a claim that it needs to pay significant costs to unwind Colac Otway Shire's membership because notice hasn't been sufficient, or because GORT entered into contracts on the understanding that Colac Otway would continue to provide funding. It really aims to spell it out clearly to them. There's no downside in supporting this resolution. If it's passed, the CEO will write to GORT by the end of the month to basically inform them that all options are being considered by this council in relation to membership of GORT. And whatever the new council might decide next year, they can't travel back in time and give GORT over 12 months' notice. Only this term of council can give GORT more than 12 months' notice, and that's what this motion aims to do. When council left the Corangamite Regional Library Corporation, there were various costs and processes to unwind council's membership. Fortunately, in that case, there was a long-standing partnership of over 20 years, and the parties were able to work through that process, which took more than a year. This has some similarities, but some differences too. Council won't know until next year what its final decision will be. The risk, if this resolution is voted down, is that GORT could interpret that as that the review is just some sort of routine review, and could claim for exit costs if council, in just a few months before the expiry, were to say, well, we've decided to reduce our contribution. I would expect if this resolution is supported today, the notification the CEO will send as per point 4 will clearly put GORT on notice. The new council will still be free to stay in GORT if they want to. They could even increase the contribution if they wanted to. They'd still be free to do that. At the same time, they'll be empowered to leave if that is their decision, with less risk that there's an argument that they haven't given sufficient notice. Again, only this term of council can give more than 12 months' notice of that possibility, that all options are on the table, and time will soon run out for us to give this notice. The new council cannot turn back the clock if that's what they want to do and decide just a few months before. They can't turn back the clock, they can't travel back in time and give 12 months' notice.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Finnegan?
Well, I think Councillor Hart said it really, really well, and I also think his councillor comment on this has said quite a lot. The reality is, at least I can look at organisations like G21, even though I've had some issues with the way it's been run or our particular funding agreement with it. At least I can look at organisations like G21 or even the South West Victoria Alliance, Rural Councils of Victoria, organisations that we do contribute money towards and can see tangible outcomes from those. I cannot name a single thing that Gort has done and that comes to mind, that springs to mind as something that they have achieved with the 100 grand or so we give them each year, and it seemed to have given them for a bit. I see targeted advertising online and TV ads from other councils involved in Gort related to tourism in their shires, but again, I don't see a single thing from Gort. I wonder, has this money been a waste? Has it been effective? And I would argue probably not. And it's probably time for us to take that money back, not rejoin Gort or any future iteration of Gort in the future, and perhaps spend the money ourselves and do a better job in showcasing what our entire region has to offer. Because the reality is the Great Ocean Road really is its own ad campaign. People come internationally and they want to go down the Great Ocean Road. It's one of those beautiful things that we just have that's there, that is everyone knows about. When they think about Australia, they think about the Great Barrier Reef, they think about the Great Ocean Road. And I would say that good on you, Councillor Hart, for bringing this motion. And I would also question, considering some of the activities of Gort, should those who have been running Gort be rocking up to council planning meetings, as happened last January, to make a pro-tourism presentation to a council planning meeting that had nothing to do with the merits of the application that was in front of us. And this was someone who was highly involved in the organisation. I can't remember who it was. It may even have been the CEO. Yeah, and has come and just tried to give us a lecture on tourism during a planning committee meeting. And I think that's an absolute waste of money if they think that's at all appropriate. And I, again, commend Councillor Hart for bringing this motion, because only this term of council can provide over 12 months of notice to Gort and put them on notice that perhaps we think they aren't doing that good of a job. And we need to put that on the record, and hopefully the future council can refer back to what we have said in this chamber today and look at the evidence and go, maybe we won't waste $100,000 a year on this pathetic organisation.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I think this is a sensible motion by Councillor Hart. It doesn't say that we're going to leave Gort, and I may not support it if it did. I certainly think that there needs to be a review of our membership costs of Gort. But Gort are very, very active along the coast, and I think the Otway Harvest Trail and some prominent accommodation providers and so forth would be singing positive stories or songs about Gort. However, I think there does need to be a greater focus on north of the ranges, more focus on Colac and its attractions, and positioning Colac as a tourism hub to get to the coast and Ballarat and the like, and also highlight some of our northern attractions. So I think a review of that would be money well spent if it's going to cost anything. But this in itself just puts Gort on notice that we may not stay in. It doesn't lock the next council into a decision about that one way or another, but definitely worthwhile a review, and I think it is fair and reasonable to give Gort that notice.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I was actually pleased to see this notice of motion come up in the agenda, and indicated to Councillor Hart that I would have been happy to second it for him. And so that's great, and I appreciate that Councillor Finnegan has done that, so that's fine, not an issue with that. But I just wanted to point out that I value the value of the experience of our officers and the process, the review process that they've already indicated they've got in place now. That the executive have done a lot of work and seeking clarity from Gort about the processes and the structure and the value to the member councils such as Colac Otway Shire, and that they will be bringing that report to us. This cements that process in place and does put clearly on Gort's radar that we are reconsidering it, and that's appropriate. The effectiveness of the organisation, I don't know. I don't know what the return has been to this council, and that's why I support the motion. However, I don't know whether they've been really, really good. That's the other side of it. And Councillor Potter has pointed out some of the good things, and in the report here, it does talk about some of the good things that Gort has been involved with. It may well be that we'll find out in the future that that's worthwhile spending this or more on. That will be a future council to decide. In that context, I actually don't support terms such as pathetic organisation. I don't support such comments in this chamber for an organisation of that. I believe that they will do what they consider is the most important thing with the funding they've given. Whether we agree with that or future council does in the future, that will be something for them to consider. So I just wanted to make that very, very clear that I thank them for the work they've done to date, but we will be reconsidering their contribution.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillor? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah. I will definitely be supporting this motion. I think there's some interesting things and comments that have been made. One of the most important is how do we assess Gort's effectiveness and the value for money. And the challenge with some of these memberships is that we're not reviewing them at budget time. By the time we get to the budget, they've already been committed to, they're already in the budget, and they go these memberships go undiscussed. It doesn't coincide with the budget process. If Councillor Hart didn't bring this motion to the chamber, well, when was something going to come to the chamber? Because by the time we might get an officer report, it might be, a new council. By the time a new council might get an officer report, it might be too late to decide to leave Great Ocean Road Tourism. We do need these type of things in time so that the new council can make the decision in a timely manner to decide whether it's effective. I hope we don't have to spend any money deciding whether it's effective or not. Probably, I think the fact that councillors around this chamber, around this table, don't know is probably a little bit of a problem. But I think there's a lot of value in this motion. It will be a decision for the new council whether we stay or not. They will have to, I guess, scrutinise the report that comes from officers and make a decision on an extremely large contribution, over $100,000. We should be reviewing all our memberships like this, really having a look at that to see whether we're getting value for money.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Thanks, councillors. Councillors, we now move on to item 10.2. It's a rescission motion relating to the future commitment to G21. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do councillors have questions or anything?
I just want to make a comment. It's my motion. Probably to tie this up with the budget process, which we are going through, I'd like to withdraw this motion, and my intention is to resubmit it for next council meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. We have general agreement. Councillor Potter?
It's Councillor Hanson's motion. If you wishes to do that, I support that.
Support it.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Support it. Thank you. Thank you. So the motion is withdrawn. We move on to an item 11, urgent business. Councillors, before I ask you to have any items of urgent business, the CEO has alerted us to an item which you may want to consider for urgent business. I will ask the CEO to give us background to that.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to provide you with a report that you can consider as urgent business tonight. There's been a recent announcement that's very exciting for our council and community, I think, that a funding application made to the federal government under the Regional Precincts and Partnership Program has been successful, and that will enable the Colac Otway Adaptable Precincts project to progress. The purpose of the report is because the funding agreement is likely to be presented for execution in the next few weeks. It's that time of year where government like to get on and get things tidied up quickly, as they do when they make funding announcements, and I'm therefore seeking authorisation tonight because I think that may need to be actioned before the next council meeting. Just a little bit about the project very briefly. We know that council has recognised that we have a serious challenge with accommodation. In particular, council has declared a key worker and accommodation crisis in 2021, and we've been looking at a whole range of opportunities to help to address that, as have most communities across the country and beyond, and in particular regional communities are looking for innovative ways to partner with others, including levels of government, to try and find solutions. So this opportunity that we have through the funding agreement, as was discussed at the start of the meeting, is not about building homes. It's about actually demonstrating that there are solutions to the housing and accommodation crisis that may be able to be very, very, very fit for purpose, adaptable, innovative, but also streamlined. The outcomes of the project, in addition to testing a whole proof of concept and having a demonstrated streamlined approval process, expected to be 2 planning permits for the 2 parcels where the master planning and planning work will happen. That doesn't mean there's a commitment for those 2 sites to then proceed to development. What it does is demonstrate that it can be achieved in a very quick way, and therefore that's very translatable to other sites in our municipality and across regional areas. In addition to that, we see a great benefit to local businesses who may be seeking to also see an opening in the market, an interest in the market, in the community, and simple ways to deliver different types of housing, such as modular housing. And so I think there's a great opportunity for other local businesses to build on the back of this project and all that it can demonstrate, and actually pave a way for local businesses to do work in the future in our shire and beyond. So that's why I think the project's very, very valuable. I have provided an urgent business item for you to consider that authorises me to execute that and put in place the appropriate governance to manage that funding agreement. Been very clear about what the commitment is and isn't on behalf of council, and it doesn't commit to moving forward with the development of the housing opportunity at the Nelson Street Depot, which is the land that council owns, and that's because we have another piece of work to do, which is understanding not only what residential accommodation might look like and how it might be managed, but also what that means for our current uses at the site, including the depot. So there's a few things to be answered before council has to make a commitment about its own land, and the same with the state government's land. We're looking at a recently vacated education site in Colac, and we know, as we heard tonight, that there might be other uses for it. My priority is to make sure that that land doesn't sit idle and become dilapidated. It needs to be in use, and if we can explore supporting an education use concurrently with the housing use, I think there is a way to do both.
Thank you, CEO. Before questions, I just want to remind councillors this is a 2-part process, and that the first process is about urgent business, and I need a motion that will enable us to take this to urgent business. Councillor Finnegan.
Yeah, happy to move the motion on the screen that council admit an item of urgent business to the agenda on the Regional Precincts and Partnership Program. Something we need to tick off on, so I'm going to move that.
What's on the screen? Can you confirm that's what you want to move?
Yes,
So
that's correct.
To move it to an item of urgent business. Have I got a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Do we speak to this motion? No. I'll put it. Want to speak to the item of urgent business? Any councillor want to speak? Mover, you want to speak?
Yeah, I guess this is just one of these times whereby an item has come up after the publishing of the agenda, and something that we would like to deal with now, rather than calling another unscheduled meeting or anything that ilk, or rather than holding it over until what's going to be a pretty bumper June meeting, especially when we're not. There's questions about, even if we get it through then, as to whether or not it'll get through in time, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that's why I'm moving this.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. Sometimes things come up at short notice and they need action immediately. We should not allow just bureaucratic nonsense to get in the way of that, and so I commend this motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those in favour? This goes to urgent business. Carried 6-0. Okay, so now we move to the substantive motion. And we've got everyone's been... Any questions before we move to the substantive motion? Councillor Finnegan.
Yeah, my question does relate to something the CEO has brought up about the one of the sites. Say if one of these sites was committed to another use, pre-committed to another use during the process of this work being undertaken. This, I guess, this I'm trying to think the work that we're seeking to fund here, this key worker housing study. I'm sorry, I'm just blanking on the exact words. Say if one of these sites was committed to another organisation for a future use during the undertaking of these works, would that impact the amount of funding that we would get, or would we have to stop and restructure what we were doing?
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan, through the chair. The expectation will be that the landowners, so in this case Council and the State Victorian Government, will commit that the land will be available so that it can be available for the purpose that is outlined in the grant, which is the master planning, etc., demonstrating and proving the streamlined approval processes, demonstrating and proving the proof of concept around housing, taking the community on that journey, creating models for the management of housing if and when it might be developed, etc. Okay, so it would be expected that there wouldn't be a permanent decision about the land ownership, right, during that period. I don't anticipate that's needed, and neither, and the state government doesn't move that quickly as a general rule anyway. So what we need is access to the site through that period. It doesn't mean that there can't be a use of the Colac property in the same way that our depot will continue to be used as a depot, and the Apollo Bay News Group will still be continuing to access the building and all of those things, okay? It just means that at the end of that point, then there will be an opportunity for the landowners to decide if there is enough benefit to pursue a residential outcome or not, and that will be a decision at the end of this project.
Sorry, follow-up question, Councillor
Thank you.
Finnegan.
Is there potential for, as part of this process, and then going through to consider perhaps, I guess, educational outcomes with the Colac site in tandem with housing outcomes for that site as a mixed use? Or does the grant we've applied for and the funding we've received preclude us from exploring that option ourselves now that the money's come through?
Yeah, I don't think that there is an opportunity to redesign and configure the funding to be a mixed use in terms of education and residential use. And the reason I say that is because St Joseph's Learning Centre, which is the organisation that's looking for a more permanent home than what it has, would probably need the whole site, okay, in reality, okay? It doesn't mean that there aren't options for them to have temporary access to that site for a year or two. It doesn't mean that you don't get to the end of a process and then there can be a weighing up. And I still, as I said, think that supporting the St Joseph's Learning Centre at that site or a different site can happen concurrently with the project delivery. While it is certainly one of the things that is sought, is that it's creating an opportunity to move forward to residential development. But the project itself is highly translatable to other sites. But not the planning permit. You can't transfer the actual permit.
Of course, and I probably should note that the reality is that perhaps St Joseph's may not be the only body interested in this site. We also have the Lavers Hill Goals program, which operates out of the former Shire offices on Murray Street, and they've been there for about a decade and operating there as well. So I'd just like to highlight that St Joseph's isn't the only
No, that is
alternative
true.
learning program in
That
Colac
is true.
Otway.
And at the moment, the only thing we are asking the Victorian Government to confirm is not to give up the site or change anything permanent about it, but to help it be accessible for this project to support all of the outcomes we're trying to deliver through this particular project.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Anyone else got questions? Councillor Hanson.
But just to clarify, is the funding attached to that site though in Wilson
That is the
Street?
nominated site.
It's a nominated site.
Yes, and so landowners, council and the state government need to make a commitment that land can be used for the purpose of that, which is to go through the process of engagement, master planning, proving the concept which happens off-site, the site investigations, etc., and setting it up so there could be a permit for that site to then be available to develop. It doesn't commit it to develop.
Any other questions? Councillor Hart and Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering, is this, I don't wish to oversimplify it, but is this just ultimately a matter of potentially 2 planning permits for 2 different sites, or is it a wider issue for the issue of, for example, bushfire overlay restrictions and modular homes being able to accommodate that sort of thing, and the capacity of modular type homes to be a solution to housing? So I'm trying to understand whether this is just localised.
Yeah.
And when I look at the partners list, I'm not sure if we're allowed to disclose the partners list in this.
It's public.
It's public, okay. So it's got Deakin University and others. I just think it's the way it's been presented today could leave people with the impression that it's just about 2 planning permits for 2 blocks of land. But
Thanks, Councillor Hart. So you're right, it is a much broader project than that. And the consortium does bring an experienced modular housing construction organisation that already has a partnership with universities, has been doing research pieces with universities, including Deakin. And so there is an opportunity to actually demonstrate and prove, the level of bushfire resilience, carbon reduction, energy efficiency, etc., through the project. And that's why it is so translatable. And that is important. Affordable housing isn't just cheap construction. It's got to be affordable to live in, okay? And so it's those kind of things. How do you have affordable housing, approved, constructed, delivered, and then be affordable for people to live in? So, with electricity and utility bills, etc., the affordability of this new innovative approach to housing goes well beyond just the land and construction. And that's why I say that whilst it's a significant amount of money, the benefits and the outcomes of the project are highly translatable to other sites, albeit we are aiming to get a planning permit approval at the end of this, and that's about proving the planning process being streamlined, okay? So there will be an opportunity on these sites. There is a whole lot more that this partnership and the project will deliver that is translatable to other sites, and so it fits really well with the housing policies that we see around trying to facilitate faster housing and accommodation issues, particularly through precinct planning.
Thank you, CEO. Any other questions? Follow-up question, Councillor Hart, then Councillor Potter.
As part of that process, will there be a way to address, if necessary, zoning of the land? I'm not sure off the top of my head what the zoning is of this Colac site, or for that matter for the Apollo Bay site. Maybe they're the right zones, but if not, is that something that would be considered in the context of this project?
Thanks, Councillor Hart. So these 2 sites have been selected in October last year because their current zoning is actually already very appropriate and ready to facilitate this. Okay, so no, this isn't about rezoning land. It's about demonstrating the planning approval for permits to then proceed. And when these projects when the application was developed and these 2 sites were identified at that stage, Department of Education indicated consistently for a very long time that it had no future intentions or expectations of that land. And so we thought it would be a good opportunity to at least create a way forward for the land, not to be lost to dilapidation, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Potter, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think you touched on it, CEO, but if I could find my question just to the Apollo Bay property that COS owns, is there a long-term desired outcome to achieve some sort of affordable worker housing on that site?
That will be up to council. And I think this project and the project to explore also what it means for council to be able to vacate that property. You need the outcomes of both of those projects before council can really make a decision about what to do, whether it should be residential land. But what I would say is you've got a large piece of land in council ownership that I think is in many ways underutilised. It's zoned residential, it has 3 street frontages, and we know that Apollo Bay has significant challenges for key worker accommodation. So if this is part of the puzzle that needs to be put together to solve it, then it may play a role. Council needs to decide that in the future.
Sorry, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess just touching on the end of that point, will the was it $2.017 million worth of cashola coming from the federal government, will any of that be put towards, and just my understanding is that that will also cover us exploring relocating the Nelson Street depot in Apollo Bay, is that correct?
No, so the funding is to deal with the 2 nominated pieces of land. Council has already allocated $120,000 from Bruce Street proceeds to help explore what it might take to relocate and the depot and vacate that. Without this $2 million grant, council was also going to try and get a grant separate that's not covered in this report of $360,000. That's subject to another council decision already public. And that would have just, again, given us more understanding about just Nelson Street. We would still have to have made the commitment that that land be available for that grant if we'd got that grant. So no difference, and it wouldn't have committed anything in terms of construction. So all of that is the same. The beauty of this is that there's a whole lot more that will be leveraged out of our work.
Thank you. I should note what's contributed to that is I've just misread point 5. I thought it said notes that we'd be reallocating the 120,000, not
okay.
that, yeah. So
Thank
you
you
for clearing that up for me, CEO.
No other questions? No other questions? Councillors, we've got a recommendation before us. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Councillor Arnott, seconded Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. I think this is possibly one of the more exciting things that has come before Council, the opportunity to get involved on the ground floor of a program of this nature. I think it's absolutely appropriate that the government's going to come out and spend a couple of $1 million before they spend billions. There's absolutely no point proceeding in a program that for housing that people don't want. So this is an opportunity for the nation and for communities to consider how they're going to provide alternative housing, how they're going to provide housing that works for their community and that it is at a price that people can afford to pay. And so needs to provide an accommodation that, as our CEO Anne has suggested, that people want to live in and that they can afford to live in. So the building of the building is only just one part of that whole cost. Now, we've already talked at length about the use of these sites for this potential sort of program. We talked about this ad nauseum in the past, so it's appropriate that we consider to go forward with this program on that basis, knowing that it's not a commitment yet. There's still a lot to be found out. We already have 120K committed for the Nelson Street site to see how we could relocate that. It saves us seeking $360,000 more because this work will be done within this, and it'll give us a far better outcome. And I would like to see the Colac Otway Shire name up in lights with the rest of them to say that we were part of this program. We discovered how to make good housing for all communities in the region of Australia.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. As the CEO just told us or reminded us, we did declare a housing crisis some time ago, and since then the CEO, mayors, councillors and staff have been advocating and lobbying at any given opportunity they can for some sort of solution to our housing crisis. But it's not just confined to Colac Otway Shire, of course. It's the same call for many, many parts across Australia. But because of our advocacy work, in my view, our work with G21 and so forth, we've been approached by people to do this groundbreaking project. We've been approached by Deakin Uni, Urbis, University of New South Wales and others to pull this together to show the government what can be done, not just in this shire, but replicated across the country. And not just in relation to housing shortages, but when you look at the floods that have occurred in Queensland, Northern New South Wales, Northern Victoria, the bushfire risks and all those houses being lost, this will help, hopefully, come up with a quick, sustainable solution to those various housing crises. So, I think this shire should be proud of this project. As Councillor Arnott said, we need our name up in lights about this, because if this is pulled off properly, and I've every confidence that it will be, this will be an outstanding project that will be spoken about across the country.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hanson. Councillor Hanson.
I would just make the comment that I was certainly glad that we had somebody come to our very open question time and ask a question off the cuff without needing to submit a topic or have it written about opportunities for a real that's been a school that's had a huge need. There's a huge need in Colac and they have growing needs. And it probably now does sit uncomfortably with me that this site in Wilson Street could be better suited to education than it is. It is a very good site for housing too. That does worry me a bit. This is an enormous amount of money, this grant money, without, there won't be one shovel put in the ground. It's just all money going to planning and consultants, etc. It probably does also concern me that the site at Apollo Bay isn't a multi-level site. I think it's mainly single-storey, possibly a single-storey proposal, maybe not, maybe it could be multi-storey. So, you do want to use the land to the best of its ability. The school site in Colac, potentially, there are other sites for housing, but probably not owned by the state government. It is very hard to get money for greenfields schools. So I do, although I probably will support it, I do have some concerns.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Finnegan.
Yeah, I guess I should say I do have some, like Councillor Hanson, I do support this with some trepidation, I will say. I think that if you were to just look at this and, look at all the partners we have, you could be forgiven for thinking, well, why are the likes of Deakin University, University of Wollongong, Urbis, Formflow and other organisations involved in this? It's because they've partnered with us because it's not beat around the bush, deliver a tangible outcome to their organisations, this project. But it will also deliver a significant positive outcome to the Colac Otway Shire, whether it be in, the design and the like of these, modular accommodations and, these plans and everything, and the determining what could perhaps be put on the site. I do find it concerning that out of that $2 million, there's not going to be any, anything actually built on the ground or anything like that, but it gets us to that point and hopefully will bring the costs down significantly for when construction does begin, hopefully. Like Councillor Hanson and others, I do have concerns about perhaps utilising that site, the Colac site, and having it utilised for housing when perhaps there is a school or perhaps even many schools or alternative education services that would like to use it while it's vacant. And, I would hope that the council, noting what the CEO has said, I would hope that the council would be in a position perhaps to, in future, provide a letter of support to those organisations if one of the two alternative learning facilities in Colac, whether that be St Joseph's or Goals, want to fill that site, that council could perhaps be supportive of that and have those organisations fill that site during the process while we're undertaking these works or doing the planning, because as we know, it's not going to happen overnight. And there could be a good couple of years that someone could utilise this school as it sits without it decaying, becoming dilapidated. So I'll be voting for this.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I really think this is a really exciting project, and it's a credit to the people who've got to the stage where Colac Otway is effectively the council that's been chosen and has the opportunity to be part of it. I think it's worth noting that council's contribution is expected to be about $16,150, basically in the form of in-kind support. The separate work, the $120,000, is to do with the relocation potentially of the Nelson Street site. Essentially, this is a mix, as I see it, a mix of a research project, and Councillor Arnott made the point. You don't you don't want the government to be spending billions on housing until they've worked out how best to do that, and that's essentially part of what this project is about. It has the university partners, it has the building industry partners, it has charities such as Salvation Army who are bringing together those different issues, and I think the point was well made. It's not just a matter of building some modular homes that comply with bushfire risk and other requirements of planning schemes. It's a matter of them being as cost effective and designed in such a way that they're cost effective to run from the point of view of energy use. So it's a mix of a research project as well as the outcome. If you just looked at the outcome of the planning permits potentially for Colac Otway sites, I think you'd be missing the bigger picture of what this is all about. And it is also a positive reflection if this is commences and has the outcome that we hope it will, that Colac Otway will be part of that process. And so I just think it's an absolute credit and well done to everyone involved to get in on the ground floor on this particular project.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. I'll now call for a vote. Councillors, all those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, are there any other items of urgent business? No, thank you. We're now moving to a closed session. The remaining items of consideration for councillor to be heard in a closed session. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us that pursuant to the provisions of the Section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting be closed to the public and council move into a closed session in order to deal with the following. Minutes of the closed session council meeting held 24th of April 2024 under the Local Government Act 2020 Section 3(1)(h). On the basis that this matter deals with confidential meeting information being records of meeting closed to the public under Section 662A. Best value review of aged care and disability services. This matter deals with the report contains council business information being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. Councillors, I will now call for a vote.
I'll move that, Mayor.
For a closed session. All those in favour? Carried 6-0. Thank you.
Mayor, may I just request a 60-second break, please? I just would like to contact family, if I may.
Thank you. So this concludes the council meeting. Thank you for joining us, and the meeting will be closed now to the public to allow for the hearing of the closed session items on the agenda, and for this reason the live stream